Hello, folks. Hope y'all can hear me. Hope that I'm coming in loud and clear. Hope that you guys are excited, too. I'm very much excited for this. Looking at the poll, I posted that and then left to go get my drink before we start. Monster Club is the one y'all are most excited for, huh? Cool. All right, well, welcome, everybody. As you all know, my name is Raven, and tonight is Monday night, which means it is our Chill and Read stream. This is our Raven's Roost Chill and Read stream. So for those of you who are new here, welcome. We're not going to be playing any games. We're not going to be watching any movies or videos. Our goal here is to chill out, hang out. I'm going to read some stories to you guys, some poems that I've written. We always have 3 stories that we read each time, and there's always one story that I read that is basically just a short story to get us started. I've already got all the stuff lined up, so I'm very excited to get things started with you guys. Again, if you're new, welcome. I hope you have a great time. My whole goal here is on Mondays, you know, we get really stressed out. It's the beginning of the week, and people are dealing with work or school and all that kind of stuff, and so I like to kind of chill out with you guys and make these kind of things very fun. It's not my most popular stream, but I like doing it. It's a lot of fun. So let's go ahead and get started. For tonight, we're going to start off with an interesting story. This story is not a short story. It's actually one that I've been working on for some time, but I'm only going to read the first chapter to you guys because I kind of want to give you guys a taste of it. The story is called Priceless, a Star Wars story. So a little bit of background about this. Me and my brother are big Star Wars fans, or we were until the sequel series came out. And because of that, I mean, we're kind of glad that the sequel series came out in a way because because when we broke away from Star Wars, we got into Warhammer 40k, which was really cool. And maybe sometime I'll read y'all a Warhammer 40k story I wrote. But beside that, I wanted to come back to Star Wars and try writing my own story, and I ended up writing a story called Priceless. And Priceless is the story of a bounty hunter named Leah Tai. And this story takes place during the age of the Old Republic. Yes, me and my brother played the Old Republic. We enjoyed it, and I created a bounty hunter character named Leah Tai, a Nautilon, and I thought that I'd write a story about her, and this is what I've created. So, we're going to get started. Oh, Lord Thunder has a question. Hello, Raven. Quick question. What's your favorite song from Lady Gaga? I don't listen to Lady Gaga all that much. I don't remember all she's done, if I'm being honest, so I can't really answer that. Anyway, moving on. Here we go. Priceless, a Star Wars story, Chapter 1. Leah Tai grimaced as she marched through the dense jungle. The humidity was intense and the heat was staggering. It was hard to see the sun through the thick canopy above, and the green leaves all around were a constant buffer to her as she made her way through the undergrowth. Every now and then she had to stop and pull out a knife to cut her way through. It was no surprise to her that this moon had gone so long uninhabited. The moon was small compared to other worlds she'd been on, but it was hard to remember that when you were constantly battling through dense forests and jungles filled with angry, buzzing insects, huge animals and beasts that wanted to eat you alive, and the occasional corpse of some fool dumb enough to stay here too long. Leah Tai wouldn't be here at all were it not for their job. Glancing up at an opening in the canopy, she could see the massive gas giant planet that this moon orbited around, enormous and angry red with whiffs of orange clouds that looked like streaks of paint that had been deliberately added to the canvas. It contrasted with the green hue of the jungle around her. The planet was known as Deros, and this moon was Salacia, a death world. She grumbled to herself as she made her way deeper into the jungle, and then paused as she picked up an interesting sound. It broke around through the insect buzzing and rustling of plant life. It was a subtle noise, both intrusive on the senses, and yet also completely natural. A noise so tranquil that, for a brief moment, the world seemed to stop for her. The painful and irritating jungle faded into an afterthought, and following the sound, she saw its source and sighed with recognition. A stream was rolling through here, and thanks to a small inclination in the elevation of the ground, the water was rolling down off the nearby rocks and splashing down in a very small, babbling waterfall. The distinct sound of water meeting smooth stone and sending its song into the air was what Leah had heard. She basked in the wonderful sound for a moment before kneeling down over the water to wash some of the dirt and grime from her face and tendrils. Reaching her gloved hands into the water, she let the cool liquid fill her hands before splashing it into her face. She exhaled pleasantly and then gazed at her reflection. A dark green face met her with large dark eyes. Where hair would be on normal humans, instead she had long tendrils that hung down her back and a few hanging over her shoulders. Leah whipped her head a little to shake the water off of them and then brushed them behind her head again. Her ears perked up at the sound of the brook again and she smiled. Leah loved the water. Maybe it was because she was a Nautilon. They were originally an aquatic and amphibious species, so perhaps that's why she was always drawn to bodies of water and fluid. It felt right to her somehow. But being in muggy, hot, difficult planets like this one was annoying to her. But it's not like she had a choice. It was her life. It was her job. It was what she was paid to do. And today she had someone very important to find on this death world. She picked herself up and continued her trek onward. And as she did, she took stock of her arms and armor. Her body was encased in a special battle armor that she'd had commissioned by the Mandalorians themselves. Though there was no helmet that could fit her head, thanks to her tendrils, so that was only her body part uncovered. Lightweight being strong enough to stop a basic blaster, she liked it most for how imposing it looked. There was a small pack attached to her back that she could activate as a jetpack, but there was no need for that in this jungle. The trees would prevent much vertical climbing in any case. Strapped to her hip was a DL-44 modified blaster pistol, her most prized death dealer. But even that wasn't her true secret weapon, which she kept hidden for just the right occasion. She doubted she'd need any of these here, but then again, you can never be 100% sure. Finally, after what felt like hours of marching through the sweltering, muggy jungle, she saw what she was looking for. Like a brown, dirty sore that was growing up out of the green flesh of the valley, she saw a palace. It was hard to make out, hidden among the backdrop of a small mountain, but the windows around it were somewhat conspicuous. She was sure guards were standing at each one, watching for trouble. After all, the owner of that little castle didn't like uninvited guests. Good thing she was definitely invited then. Filled with a newfound sense of purpose, she made her way to the castle, hand resting easily on her gun, just in case. She walked up to the large front door, jutting out from the hidden castle like a cave. In front of it were two large and ugly creatures. Gemmeran guards, fat, green, and disgusting. The pig people had small tusks jutting up on either side of their hog-like faces. Their beady eyes, hiding under their over-exaggerated brow, glared dangerously at her as they raised their halberd power axes. They marched towards her wearing fur and basic iron-based armor. They spoke in their squealing, oinking language and blocked her path. Leah had learned many languages across the galaxy for work, but the Gamorrean language was not one of them. As they approached, she held up her hands. "Easy, boys," she said in a calm and smooth voice. It was both seductive and sensual, but carried a hint of warning. "I'm here for your boss, not you." Another angry snort, and the nearest Gamorrean tried to shove his axe palm at her. She took a single step back, hand going to her gun. "Buddy, you stick that in my face again, and I'm going to shove it up your ass," she hissed. The Gamorrean didn't indicate if he understood, but instead readied himself to fight if need be. Leah snarled and pulled her pistol at last, aiming it between the eyes of the first one. "I'm not asking you again, Tubby. Your boss asked for me. Now get the hell out of my way." That did it. The Gamorreans let out belching squeals of anger and started towards her. "Stop this!" The Gamorreans froze as a tall man walked out of the cave-like opening. Well, he wasn't quite a man. He wasn't human. He was a Zabrak with dark-colored skin with a few horns protruding from his bald scalp. Leah had seen many Zabraks during her travels, and most seemed rather tough or dangerous to some extent, but this one seemed rather docile. His green, watery eyes looked from the Gamorreans to Leah and back again as if trying to make sense of the situation. "This is ridiculous. Lower your weapons. She is a guest. A guest!" The Gamorrean squealed something at him and he shook his head. "No, you buffoon! A visitor! The esteemed Lord Garrick is waiting for her!" The Gamorrean guards looked from one to the other and then grunted in frustration, stepping aside. The Zabrak coughed wetly and then looked at Leah, who had not put away her pistol. "I beg your pardon. My name is Tegath. I am the secretary and assistant to Lord Garrick. His Excellency is expecting you, if you'll kindly give me your gun." "Not a chance," Leah answered darkly. Tegath colored a little but didn't move. I'm afraid His Excellency doesn't allow his guest to be armed while in his presence," he pushed. "This will go much easier if you cooperate." Leah glared at him a moment before finally lowering her gun and handing it to him. He took it from her gladly and then turned on his heel to walk her inside. She smirked to herself. This idiot really was a poor secretary and guard. Surely anyone with an ounce of brain power knows a bounty hunter carries more than one weapon, right? She said nothing, though, as he walked her inside. The dark cave that led through the castle was dimly lit by lanterns hanging above the passageway. Leah's eyes saw fine in the dark, but she was still cautious and allowing her tendrils to do their work. Nautilin tendrils could pick up traces of pheromones in the air, reading the emotions and dispositions of individuals around her. She caught a few interesting sensations. Greed, lust, fear. Definitely a lot of fear. She was so distracted thinking about the sensations that she almost missed the sharp turn that Teagath suddenly took, leading them down a long flight of stairs deep into the bowels of the fortress. "Now, Lord Garrick does not like to argue," Teagath said, explaining the proper manners when dealing with a crime lord. "You will speak only when spoken to. You will not be hostile or threatening. You will address him always in a polite and positive manner, and you will not draw any attention to—" "It's going to be fine, friend," she answered with a groan. "I know the drill." "I'm just trying to keep you alive, bounty hunter," he explained. "I've been doing that pretty well for a long time without your help," Leah explained coldly. He sighed and walked on. "As you wish," he replied and said nothing more. Finally, after taking a few more pathways and stairs, there was a new sensation rising to meet Leah. Not the pheromones either, but rather the smells. Like a combination of flatulence mixed with hookah smoke. There was the intense sensation of moist warmth and vague underlying hint of sex in the air. She had a feeling that they were close. There was music playing too, smooth jazz of some kind from a track she'd never heard. Teagath led her to a large set of double doors and pushed them open, and Leah was met with the view behind it. This was a large throne room. The walls were well curved to create a circular area with small windowed spaces out evenly on one side of the room to illuminate the center of the room. And around it were various humans and aliens of various types, laughing, chanting, talking, and cheering at what was going on in the center of the room. 2 Twi'leks were dancing away, barely clothed and moving their bodies in alluring sexual ways to drive the patrons wild. Their eyes caught Leah's for a moment, and one winked at her. Leah smiled politely back, but did nothing else, and the girls went back to dancing. There was a large band playing the jazz song that the girls were dancing to, and Leah took a moment to try and appreciate the sound, which wasn't easy to do. Maybe she'd been too addicted to galactic radio on her ship. Smoke drifted in the air like a veil, and Leah could see some patrons smoking and drinking, but they weren't the ones contributing the most. Laying out on the other side of the room, huge and enormous, was the one she'd come to see. He was large, sickly green, and leathery. He had no legs, but 2 stubby arms on either side of his massive body. He had a wide mouth like a frog and enormous orange eyes that watched the women dancing somewhat hungrily. His long, slimy tongue slid in and out of his mouth as he watched, and his long tail twitched. His body was gargantuan, and he had no neck, but his head simply grew from his body. This was Garrick the Hutt, the one she'd come to see. "May I introduce?" Teagath said loudly to gain the attention of the room, and the band stopped playing. Garrick turned his attention to the door to see what Teagath had to say. "The esteemed bounty hunter, Leah Tai." Leah walked out from the shadows and marched towards the center of the room. She glanced around at the patrons, who were all staring at her. She noticed a few men in the back who she recognized. They had bounties. But she wasn't here for them, and to try and catch them while a guest to a hut? Bad idea. She also noted at least 2 bounty hunters in the room besides her. Were they smart enough not to try anything around a Hutt clan leader? Who knew? Either way, they weren't her problem. The Twi'lek dancer stepped aside for her as she took center stage and stood before Garrick. His wide mouth broke into a big smile. "Ah, at last." He spoke in the deep language of the Hutts, but Leah was fluent in it. She'd known it for a long time, ever since she was a child. "So the great Leah Tai comes before me." "Sorry if I'm late," Leah answered. Garrick then turned to the room and raised his hand. "All of you, get out of my sight. I have to speak to this hunter alone." The room immediately started to clear, although some remained a little longer. Teagath looked flabbergasted. "Your Excellence, are you sure that's wise?" "What's unwise," Garrick growled, "is questioning my orders when they're given." Teagath took the warning and then hurried out of the room without another word. The bounty hunters and criminals in the room that had lingered to see what kind of job Garrick was going to give took the hint as well and slunk out sullenly, followed by the band members. Only the Twi'leks remained, looking sad and longing, running up to Garrick and whispering to him in the Hutt language. Garrick waved them off lightly. No, my lovelies, none of that.
Daddy has to work. I'll call you later.
The Twi'leks cooed and tried to hug him tighter, failing to wrap their arms around his large body, but he again waved them off.
Go now.
The Twi'leks climbed down at last and strutted away, both strutting by Leia and one even brushing her with her two head tails. Leia couldn't tell if she was trying to flirt or warning her not to try and seduce Garrick. The pheromones Leia picked up from both were rather lustful, so it was hard to tell. She shrugged it off and went back to Garrick. When the room was empty, the large slug waited a moment and lifted her long golden hookah pipe, puffing it and then exhaling long and low. After he let out a long belch, he then turned his eyes to Leia with a mischievous grin.
It's been a long time, Leia Tai.
How you doing, big guy? Leia then marched forward, stepped onto the large platform that acted as Garrick's bed, and wrapped her arms around his chin where his neck would have been in a familiar hug. This wasn't like the Twi'leks who had clung to him with lust, but this was more like the reunion of old friends. No one knew the true relationship between Garrick and the bounty hunter Leia Tai. It was a secret they could never tell anyone, but Leia knew a great deal about Garrick. Unlike most of his kind, Garrick, a criminal though he was a very practical creature. He was more patient and even somewhat more sympathetic than most of his family or kind, and this made some view him as weak. But he was anything but. Leia knew the actual strength behind Garrick, and that's why she respected him. After a moment, the smell of Garrick became a bit much and Leia had to step back, though Garrick didn't seem to take any offense. Gosh, you've gotten a lot fatter since the last time I saw you, Leia smirked.
Garrick chuckled. And you've filled out in a lot of good ways.
He licked his mouth a little.
I'd love to see you in one of my dancer's outfits.
I'll pass, thanks, Leia grimaced. Not much for that kind of life.
I suppose not. Still, you're not the same small-time punk I met all those years ago on Nar Shaddaa.
I grew up. So did you, Leia replied. But just look at you. From small-time gang leader to a high-ranking Hutt in the Desillusic clan? I thought your dad disowned you or something. The Desillusic clan was a powerful and infamous Hutt clan with control of various planets in Hutt space. Garrick's father, Dagog, had disowned Garrick at a young age, and Garrick had resented him and the clan ever since.
Hard for father to object when he's dead,
Garrick smirked. Leia frowned. Really? You killed your old man? Leia asked. Didn't think you had it in you. I remember you were always kind of a squeamish one for a Hutt.
Hey, I've grown past that,
Garrick snapped defensively.
I'm not the same slug that I used to be.
He then laughed heartily.
But you're not wrong either. I couldn't kill that bastard of a father of mine. Scum though he was still family. Luckily I didn't have to. My uncle killed him.
Jico? Leia asked. Jico the Hutt? Why?
Found out my father was doing backhand deals with the Empire, Garrick shrugged. Apparently the old man was giving Empire ships safe passage through his territory in exchange for payment.
That doesn't seem unreasonable, Leia muttered. Hutts give favors to the Republic and Empire needs if price is right.
Yes, but my stupid old man got a little bit too greedy and kept hiking the price tag for his generosity, so the Empire started to complain. They asked Uncle Jico to do something about him, so he did.
Garrick snorted with amusement.
Besides, Jico wanted to lead the clan in the first place.
And how did that put you at the top?
Uncle Jico likes me. Thinks I'm softer than my old man and won't be a threat to his power. He's right about that, of course. I have no interest in clan leadership.
He chuckled, and Leia smiled. Really? No desire to rule?
Too much effort, and way too much politics. And frankly, I'm just not interested in the publicity of it. I like staying safely under the radar where I can conduct business without dealing with the Hutt Council.
He answered with a nod of annoyance, and Leia laughed. Yeah, you've definitely grown up. But it is good to see you, Garrick. When I heard you were back in the Desillusic, I couldn't believe it. Garrick waved aside the praise, though he smiled all the same.
It's not quite as fun as it seems. You wouldn't believe the amount of backstabbing cutthroats I have to deal with. And then there are the employees and their constant bitching about every issue with trade and smuggling. And of course, the Republic and Empire both keep trying to placate me to curry favor with my uncle.
Who do you favor? Leah asked. Garrick shook his head.
You know better than that, Leah, he sighed, taking another puff of his hookah. Doesn't matter who we support. Neither side is our ally. The Empire may have deeper pockets, but they're backstabbers, traitors, and very poor friends. Working with the Empire is sure to be profitable in the short term, but disastrous in the long term. And the Republic is certainly more loyal and steadfast in their agreements, but they lack any backbone to get anything done. They're terrified of sparking another war with the Empire, and that fear makes them unreliable and not very forthcoming with offers. Plus, neither side really appreciate the clans. Not that I blame them.
Leah nodded her head knowingly. She was already well aware of the precarious and tense situation between the Sith Empire and the Republic. The whole galaxy felt the weight of the next war coming, and there was no presumptions about the nature of this imagined truce. Well, we can't pick our clients, Leah added.
Of course we can, Garrick corrected smartly. Don't you remember what I told you back on Nar Shaddaa, Leah? He asked.
Leah thought back to her youth, nothing more than a little sneak thief and pickpocket. Garrick had been young then, too, an outcast Hutt running a small gang of pickpockets, punks, and street urchins. He and Leah had been close then. Garrick taught Leah the back alleys and tools of the trade, while Leah had honed her art of staying out of trouble. Garrick had told her many things back then. Something about choosing clients based on money, I assume? Leah laughed. Garrick shook his head, his mouth still wide in a smile. That's the tactic of a petty thief. And we're both well beyond those days, he smirked. Money is irrelevant when choosing clients. In fact, sometimes the client with the deeper pocket turns out to be the client most likely to stab you in the back. No. You don't choose based on money, Leah Tai. You choose based on principle. Leah stifled a laugh. What does principle have to do with this? Everything, Garrick answered firmly without smiling, making Leah blink a moment. He wasn't joking anymore. We're vagrants, Leah. We live outside the safe confines of law and order. We're not sleeping in the peaceful belly of the Republic, and we're not under the strict but safe walls of the Empire. We're on our own. Our destiny, fortune, and safety is ours to determine. This freedom can blind us to truth, convince us we don't need codes or principles. But that's a lie. The fact we are so free means, more than anything, that we need something to ground ourselves in. Wow, that seems a bit idealistic to hear from a Hutt, Leah shrugged ruefully. I've never worked for any Hutt who didn't leap at the chance to line his or her pockets. We're not all scumbags, you know, Garrick chuckled, but you're not wrong. Principle is severely lacking where most of my kind are concerned. And that's a shame, because that's the reason I've called you here today. Leah stiffened a little, glad to finally be down to the topic of business. She knew better than to think Garrick would call her here just for a social meeting. Finally. So, what's the job, boss? Leah smirked, using Garrick's old nickname when she was in his street urchin gang. Garrick's mouth twitched into a smile at the use of the name, and he then puffed his hookah again, his tail slapping the ground gently. I've got a bounty for you, but unlike the normal protocol, I don't want this target alive. I'd much prefer you kill him outright. There was a tint of anger in Garrick's voice as he spoke of the target. It was also unconventional to request a death order like this from a bounty hunter. Usually you could just hire an assassin or program an assassin droid for something like this. So why get a bounty hunter like her? Who's the target? Leah asked. Cross of the Angelak Khajidik. Leah's heart practically froze in her chest, and her eyes widened in surprise. Garrick's mouth returned to a frown at her expression, and he puffed his hookah patiently. I see you're familiar with the name. That's... Leah started to say, but the words died on her lips. The two words were both Huttese. It roughly translated to the Angelak Syndicate. The Angeliac were a prominent clan of the Hutts based in the DU system. Not as big or imposing as the Destiligi clan, but definitely not one to be trifled with. You want me to kill a Hutt? Cross specifically. But I wouldn't be upset if you kill his family along with him, Garrick growled. What the hell, Garrick? Leah finally snapped. I mean, why not just have your own guards put a few rounds in me instead? That's a suicide job. You know how well guarded Hutt leaders are. That's why I'm sending you, Leah, Garrick explained. Krosh is well prepared for assassins.
but he hires bounty hunters all the time. Walk in to accept a bounty from that slug, and then kill him.
And after I do, what about when the guards and party-goers go to kill me in response? Leah hissed.
Well, you're a clever girl, Garrick chuckled. I'm sure you'll figure a way out of it. I recall you outrunning quite a few grunts back in the day when the Ravagers had you surrounded outside the shack.
The shack was the name of the hideaway that Garrick used in their youth for the gang. A rival gang called the Ravagers had tailed some of the youths to their hideaway, and Leah had been asked to lure them away when she'd done well. But that was different, and Leah knew it. Back then, she'd known Nar Shaddaa, and she knew the city. She knew how to find the best holes and alleyways to slip through without being caught. Here, she'd be in a throne room surrounded by annoyed and frustrated guards who were itching to kill anyone they realistically could, and there were likely no alleys or holes to leap into once the shooting started. Damn it all, Garrick, you know I'd walk on hot coals for you, but this, Leah grumbled.
Oh, don't worry your pretty little head.
Garrick chuckled with a mew.
I wouldn't send you unless I thought you could do it. Besides, we have mutual reasons for destroying Krosh.
We do? Leah asked. Why would I want him dead?
Several reasons, actually, Garrick shrugged. On a more professional level, my uncle Jiko wants him removed in any event. The Angeliac Khajidik is expanding its holdings too rapidly and intruding into Dasiligic holdings. They're already been warned before to stay out of our way. But that's the way it is with the Khajidiks like theirs. If they think they can take it for themselves, they will. Be it a diamond ring, a slave, or a whole damn planet. Taking out Krosh will be a brutal reminder that our clan is not to be ignored.
Well, that's the professional reason. But what's my personal reason? Leah asked. Garrick paused a moment in thought, and then he gently brushed a cushion near him with his tail. An indicator. He wanted to whisper and not be heard. There was always the possibility that his guards were eavesdropping, and for what he wanted to say, he couldn't risk being heard. Taking the hint, Leah approached and sat on the cushion as Garrick leaned close to whisper in her ear his message.
Krosh is in charge of a slave fortress on Diu, he whispered darkly. It acts as a slave market location for criminal enterprises and the Sith Empire itself.
Leah's face darkened a little, and she began to realize what Garrick was indicating. You want me to free them?
It would make my uncle pleased, which benefits me, and it would give you some degree of satisfaction, which benefits you, Garrick explained.
Big talk coming from a clan of slavers yourself. You really expect me to think you and your uncle actually give a damn about slaves and their lot? Leah growled.
Garrick raised his stubby arms in protest. Hey, now. I never said we were innocent of anything. But you know me, Ty. I don't care for the slave market. Too messy and expensive. Gun and narcotic smuggling is enough for my purposes. You can ask my secretary himself and see I haven't sold a single slave since I gained this position.
Leah couldn't deny he was probably telling the truth. The Dasiligic clan were a large slavery empire themselves, but Garrick had always found the slave business distasteful. Since being disowned, he'd seen from the other side how slaves lived and found it a bitter experience. And of course, Leah had her own reasons for hating the slave markets. She shook those thoughts away. Okay, now I get it.
Like I said, my friend, you choose your clients based on principles, not money, Garrick explained.
Leah now understood why she'd been asked for, why Garrick had called her here. Trying not to show too much of her true feelings, though, Leah gave a wry smile. The money's always nice, though, she said, looking up at Garrick.
Garrick's face split into a grin and he laughed. That it is.
He then puffed his hookah and smiled. And that was Chapter 1 of Priceless, a Star Wars story. I wrote that. Wow, when did I write this? This was a long time ago. Oh man. But anyway, what did you guys think of that? Let me know in the chat real quick. Always glad to read a good Star Wars story. Figured if Disney's not going to make them, I might as well make them, right? Yeah, the funny thing was, I know that the Hutts are always portrayed as evil, but I always thought, look at it from a new perspective. You might find that there are some Hutts who are actually pretty amiable. Will I do more? Actually, I've already written a few other chapters for the story. All right, well, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into our first story of the night, and we usually start with Tomoki, don't we? We're going to start off with Tomoki. Y'all okay with that? I saw that in the chat, Monster Club won the vote, but I'd still like to read Tomoki if that's okay. I think we left off on chapter 5. Tomoki's mother had just been killed, and in response, Tomoki took out all of the bozos who'd done the job. Can we hear them sometime? Yeah, if y'all want, next Monday or next time I do a reading stream, I will read the next chapter. All right, here we go. Tomoki time. We're up on chapter 5. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry, I cried. I said those words so many times. I'm sure they were inscribed on my tongue by now. My mother's body lay before me as I was on my knees crying over her. The dark sky above us cried tears as well that baptized me in my own guilt. Her peaceful, smiling face. I could still see it smiling, even if just slightly. The water that trickled off from her face looked like tears. Was she crying too? Could she hear my voice in heaven? I wailed at the sky and beat my fists into the grass, wishing I could reverse time, change what happened, and bring her back. The hill at which I brought her overlooked the town, and a single tree stood nearby, shadowing us. I brought her here because this place had value. She would take me here when I was young and say that she used to play here when she was little. I always had fond memories of sitting on this hill and just looking at the sky. Even when Belle and I didn't agree, or if we'd had a fight, coming here, we'd get over it and forget it. This was our place of renewal, of righting wrongs, but this time there was no fixing things. I couldn't right this wrong. It was too little too late. Belle, why did you do it? I cried. Because that's what a mother does for her son. I gritted my teeth and clutched my chest in pain as I remembered her words. I felt my heart ripping in half. The memory of her voice was like a blade to my heart, and I wanted to throw up. I wanted to scream, but at the same time, I wanted to lay down with her and never let her go. I wanted to stay with her here forever and take care of her. Mom, I cried, calling her by the title she'd so long wanted to be called, and now wishing I'd said it sooner. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mom. Belle used to read to me from this old book, and in it there was a story about how God created the world, and when he created mankind, he spoke to him, and he lived. Hold on, 1 second. My throat hurts, I need a drink real quick. Sorry about that. What did God say to that man? What were the words said that could bring my mother back? I didn't know. But the only words in my heart were what I couldn't stop repeating. I'm so sorry, I whimpered, touching her lifeless and beautiful face. Tomoki. I didn't look up, but I knew the voice. Tomoki. I know that this is hard, but what do you want, Hayato? I snarled. She deserves a proper burial, Hayato answered softly. You stay away from her. I need to stay with her, I snapped. And what do you think you'll accomplish by keeping her here exposed to the elements? Hayato asked. This was our special place. This was our childhood playground, and we'd come here when we were angry or sad. And I'm still sad, so we can't leave, I choked, trying hard not to break down again. Tomoki, I am truly sorry for what you've lost. But you and I both know that it's time to let her rest in peace, Hayato muttered. I didn't answer, and I didn't move. I knew he was right, but I couldn't bring myself to release her body, because it wasn't so simple. It's my fault, I cried. If I If I had just taken that hit instead, if I hadn't argued with her, if I treated her like a mom, it's because of my stupid pride. This isn't your fault, Hayato replied. You know nothing about it, I snarled back venomously. I know that you couldn't have stopped her from jumping in the way of that attack, Hayato answered. And I know that she died protecting you. She never held any resentment for you, Tomoki. She didn't blame you, so don't blame yourself. Then who else can I blame? I cried angrily, hugging my mother to my chest. I'll never make this right. I can never fix this. I can never apologize. I'll never fight again. I'll never fight again. I screamed. Stop being foolish, Tomoki, Hayato stated plainly. Belle told me about your heritage. Battle is in your blood. It's a part of who you are, and it's not the reason she's dead now. My anger flared forth, and I rounded, facing him again, my teeth bared and my fists shaking. Shut up, you stupid old man, I roared. What do you know of me? What do you know about any of this? If you give up on yourself and who you are, it won't bring her back, and it won't make amends for anything. Tomoki, you can't bring her back, and you can't deny who and what you are. I told you to shut up! I charged him, all my rage built into my fists. I was going to pound his face into the wet grass and stomp it to pieces. How dare he speak to me like that? I didn't want to hear it. I couldn't listen to it. I swung at his face, but his hand was there to meet it, and with a slight sweeping motion, he brought my fist down and past me. My momentum carried me forward, and he kicked my ankle, causing me to trip and fall on my face and into the wet grass. I leapt up again to attack, and like before, he grabbed my wrist and flipped me onto my back as easily as if I were made of straw. He was good. Very good. That's enough, Tomoki, he snapped. I struggled and growled. I built up ki into my hand to blast him to pieces. He simply reached out and poked my neck in a certain spot, and I felt all my energy suddenly drop. My ki expired, and I rolled away from him, feeling weak. Had he hit a pressure point? Calm down. Calm down and listen to what I have to say. I growled, but didn't attack again. I knew better now. Somehow, fighting him had actually sobered me up a little. Tomoki, I'm sorry, he stated forcefully. Belle was not just your caretaker and your adoptive mother. She was a good friend of mine. She was like a daughter to me, just like you were like a son to her. Losing her breaks my heart as well. I didn't say a word, but merely listened. For the past few months, she's come to me and asked me to train you in the martial arts and meditation, hoping to control your powers and your strength. And I told her that you would have to come to me when you felt ready. I see now that was my mistake. Your pride kept you from ever coming to me. What's your point? You're saying it's your fault? I asked. I'm saying that it's as much my fault as it is yours. Our stubbornness caused this, but we can both make it right together, Hayato said. It was then I paused and looked deeper into his eyes. Behind the rain, I could see tears rolling down his cheeks. I hesitated a moment and let down my guard. He, too, was weeping over Belle. Belle wanted more than anything to raise you and be a good mother. She tried desperately to mold you into a strong, capable, and righteous young man and warrior. She loved you, Tomoki, loved you enough to throw herself in the line of fire to protect you. And if you truly want to repay her, then help her desire become a reality. As Hayato spoke, I felt my heart breaking again, and I tried to blink back the tears. I shook violently like an earthquake and fell to my knees, gripping the grass with all my strength. I will not force you, Tomoki. It's your choice to make, of course, but know that I, too, want to honor her wishes. What about you? He asked. I finally managed to find my voice to speak, and I bowed my head low. I let go of my pride once more, and I bowed my head before Hayato, placing it on the ground. The rain began to slightly, as I shivered and let him see the back of my neck. Master Hayato, I humbly ask that you train me. I accept you as my student, Hayato whispered. We will begin your training tomorrow, but right now, there is the matter of Belle. He and I both turned and looked at her. Tomoki, it would be unwise for you to attend her funeral. Though you were a Super Saiyan at the time, the police are likely looking for you. It would be best for you to lay low for a while. Right, yeah. I didn't want to go anyway. I'm not one for ceremonies like that. Tomorrow after the funeral, I'll meet you at her home. Then we'll go, Hayato explained.
Go where exactly? I asked. We're going on a year-long training journey. I'm going to show you the world beyond this town. And in that time, I will train you. The environment will test you, and the cultures and worlds we find will mature you. By the time we return here, the town will have all but forgotten the golden-haired warrior, and you yourself shall have become stronger and more capable as a man, Hayato said proudly. Well, you seem excited for this, I grumbled. It's what Belle wanted. And I am more than happy to do this for her, Hayato smiled. I warn you, though, Tomoki, it will not be easy training under me. I didn't expect it would, I sighed. Now, about Belle's body, Hayato muttered. I can't. I looked back at her body and winced, not wanting to imagine saying goodbye to it forever. I would take it to the police, and then leave so as not to be arrested or questioned. They'll know how to take care of her. I thought back and recalled that I remembered the daughter of the police chief went to my school, so perhaps I could convince her to take in my mother. Yeah, I'll take her, I whispered. I'll take her to the police station. The chief of police, I think his daughter went to school with me. She seemed nice, and I want Belle to be taken by nice people, I replied, choked on my words. If this is too difficult for you... No, I responded gruffly. I need to do this myself. I'll see you tomorrow, Master Hayato. I picked up my mother's body, and I kissed her forehead the way she kissed mine when she tucked me in. And I lifted off the ground and flew towards the city. The police station was a modest building. It was large but not flashy. Several cop cars were missing from the police station parking lot, probably still cleaning up the mess downtown where I'd had my battle. I landed at the front door and I kicked the door hard, making a loud banging sound. No one came right away, and I set down my mother's body at the steps. I stood up and waited. I wouldn't leave here until I was sure someone would find her. I watched and waited. I choked a little looking at Belle's face and bit my lip. After a few minutes, the door opened and a policeman stood there. You! He pulled his gun fast on me, and I glared at him. Before he could do anything, another figure appeared behind him. It was a girl who was about my height and age. She had long, light hair that was almost a grayish color. Her big red eyes found me in shock, and then at the body on the stairs with equal horror. She turned and screamed, Dad! Dad! The cop in front of her didn't move. He kept his gun on me. I didn't say a word, just glaring at the cop with the gun. A few moments later, I saw another man run out. He was older, with graying hair around his temples and a mustache on his face and darker hair. He had red eyes like his daughter's and a tired face. One look at me and the officer, and he jumped into action. Victoria, go back inside, he ordered. She did no such thing. He then looked at me. Tomoki? Hello, Mr. Rhodes, I grumbled, quickly drawing Victoria's name from the recesses of my memories. Young man, you've caused us no small degree of trouble tonight, he growled. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Sorry won't cover this up, son. His eyes then glanced down at Belle, and his glare softened. God, Belle, she... I'd heard, but I'm not here to hurt anyone, I grumbled. I know, he nodded. I figure you've had enough hurting. Sir, the police officer whispered, permission to cuff the kid? I turned my glare on the officer as if daring him to try. Rhodes looked from me to Belle and then closed his eyes slowly. Negative. It's fine. But sir, he protested, he's clearly a fugitive with... We have a body here that's getting soaked in the rain, Rhodes interrupted. Help me get her inside. He then turned to me inside. And as for you, Tomoki, well, I better not ever see you in this town again, kid. Please, take care of her, sir. I turned on my heel and marched away to go home and collect my things. Tomoki? I hadn't made it all the way to the end of the parking lot before I heard a young girl running out to me. It was Victoria again. I stared at her in the rain, and she was holding an umbrella over to keep the raindrops off of her. Tomoki. Yeah, I asked. I'm really sorry, she said weakly. There was the word again. You didn't do anything. But she was special to you, right? And I know that hurts. I didn't bother asking her how she knew that. I didn't care. Victoria then looked at me with big eyes and frowned. Are you really leaving, Tomoki? Yeah, I answered. Will you ever be back? She asked. I guess, I responded. She smiled a little, and her sad red eyes shone a bit in the night like a pair of rubies. Good. You be careful, okay? Why do you care? I asked. I was always a jerk in school. She giggled and shook her head. No, you're a good person, I think. You're just not great at showing it. She laughed. I didn't laugh back. You don't know anything about me, I growled.
You just don't know. Well, I'd like to, she offered. She walked over and held out a small piece of paper that was gradually getting raindrops on it. I snatched it quick to take it out of the rain and looked at a series of numbers. And that's my number. If you ever need anything or just want to talk. I don't have a phone, I answered. Well, then you get one, dummy, she snapped before turning. And be safe, okay? She then ran back inside and out of the rain, leaving me confused and bewildered by her. Maybe I just don't understand girls, I muttered. But those feelings of confusion were replaced by the sight of the blood on my hands from carrying my mother. With a long sigh of regret, I launched myself to the sky and flew away from the city and towards my home. It would be the last night I spent there, and I needed to be alone with my memories. And that was chapter 5. Oh, hey Aaron, glad you're here. You missed me reading Priceless earlier, the Star Wars story? I'm sorry you missed that. Tell you what, maybe at the end of the reading tonight, I'll read the second chapter for you. Alright, we'll read chapter 6, and then we'll probably move on to Monster Club. Pretty quiet in chat. Okay, well, we'll just move on then. No worries. Chapter 6 of Tale of Tomoki. This one was written November 7th, 2015. Have a safe trip home, Victoria. Thanks, Charlie, Victoria called back, picking up her bag to head out to her car. The student council meeting had gone way longer than she'd wanted it to. Charlie and Nicole were still there with her, and Nicole just gave a giggle. You know, Charlie, it's actually polite to walk girls home, Nicole winked. Don't you start, Victoria groaned. It was just like Nicole to try and push boys her direction when she wasn't interested. But Nicole was a sweet girl, always quick to try and help where help wasn't really wanted. Well, what about you, Nicole? You got a ride? Charlie asked. Nicole nodded. Yeah, my brother's coming to get me, she answered. Charlie looked a bit disappointed, brushing his red locks out of his freckle-pocked face. Nicole giggled at this and winked. I mean, if you want to meet him and talk about possibly asking me home from now on. No, I'm good, Charlie winced. Your brother's really intimidating. All big brothers are, Nicole answered. She brushed a few strands of her black hair behind her ear and turned her deep brown eyes on Victoria. Right? I wouldn't know. I don't have a brother, Victoria shrugged. Only child. Lucky. My sis is a real pain, Charlie groaned. Look, guys, I gotta go or my dad's gonna freak, Victoria laughed. I'll see y'all later. With a final wave to Nicole and Charlie, Victoria walked out of the building and on her way through the halls to her car. High school was rougher on Victoria than it honestly needed to be, especially with her having joined the student council. She knew it was a large order, but a part of her wanted to do something to give back to the school and somehow to the community. Every little bit helps, her father would say, but did it really help in the grand scheme of things? She liked to think so, and yet, looking at the city now, what did a student council even matter? It had been 3 whole years since the incident that the media had come to call the Golden Warrior incident. 3 long years since Tomoki had left, and in that time, things had gone from bad to worse in terms of crime. The mad scientist calling himself Nathaniel Richardson had wanted to defeat Tomoki to prove the superiority of his weapons. But in so doing, he'd started an arms race. His laboratory was found, raided, and soon weapons, chemicals, drugs, enhancing agents, everything began hitting the street. Like a domino effect, when one superhuman power or superweapon prototype appeared, another worked to gain the edge in power. Gangs and crime syndicates had suddenly started showing all new and devastating weapons, and others still started to reveal terrifying mutations and superhuman agents that kept the police on their toes. The police are yet another problem. With the rise in crime, the shady cops have begun to breed like roaches in the ranks. Dirty cops who sell to and snitch to gangs and thugs have begun to fill the force with only a handful of true blue officers to help keep the peace. Victoria's father, the current police chief, was doing his best to keep the morale and steadfastness of his force together, but it was a very difficult process, and he was often too tired to even stay awake while he was home. So Victoria spent her time at school or doing work at home. The moon was out now, and Victoria took a reprieve from her thoughts to admire it. It was not full, but it was certainly a lovely crescent shape that seemed almost eerie against the slowly darkening sky. The sun was setting slowly in the distance, and her high school parking lot with only a few scattered cars populating it, casts long, lonely shadows across the pavement. Nights like this used to make her smile and enjoy the cool evening, but not anymore. The night held only dangers now. Hey! Victoria turned around to see a tall young man walking towards her. He's wearing a white hoodie so he could be easily made out even in the setting sun. He had a cigarette in his fingers that was still smoking, and he had on a pair of jeans with a torn spot on one knee. His hair under his hood looked brown or black somehow, but it was hard to make out under his hood. Yes? Victoria asked. Victoria Rhodes, right? Do I know you? Victoria questioned again, her body going a bit rigid. Nah, no. But I do know your old man, he smirked. Everyone knows my dad, Victoria scoffed. Yeah, they do. And a lot of people want him taken out of the chief's seat. As he spoke, a few other men began to walk out of their cars. Car doors slammed as other grunt wearing hoodies and leather jackets came walking out. A few carrying knives, and at least 2 with firearms in their pockets. We definitely do. Victoria growled and backed away slowly, bracing herself. It was clear what this was now. Oh, I get it. Come to hold me as hostage or something? Let's go with or something, bitch, one of the thugs scoffed. The others chuckled and he made a move to grab her wrist. Victoria reacted instantly and fired a fist into his gut, knocking him over in pain. Back off, Victoria roared. This sent a ripple of chuckles and mocking oohs of sarcastic fear. Victoria didn't flinch. You're not the first assholes who tried to take me down. You won't be the last. Instinct and training kicked in as Victoria raised her fist in a boxing position. To protect herself, Victoria had taken boxing classes to prepare for these situations. Who wants a taste next? She hoped that her bluff would help force them back. For a moment, none of the thugs said anything, but then one stepped out with a gun and aimed it at her face. Can you punch this? He laughed. Victoria growled angrily, but didn't lower her guard. You cowards. Can't even fight me like real men, Victoria snapped. We ain't here to fight anyone, the leader in the white hood laughed. We're here to either kill you or take you. You choose which. Victoria tried to come up with some comeback or some way of escape or victory, but she couldn't outrun a bullet, and she knew they had no reason to keep her alive if they decided to kill her. Her only chance was to go quietly. You bastards. See? We can be reasonable, can't we, boys? The man in the white hoodie laughed. The others laughed back and moved in to grab her. Excuse me. Everyone turned at the sound of the voice. There was a new person there now. Victoria looked and saw him leaning against a parked black car. Because of the setting sun, it was hard to make him out, but he was wearing a black hoodie and jeans. He had on light shoes and bandages wrapped around his arms and hands. His hair was a messy brown, and his eyes were a deep green, somewhat familiar. He was looking over at the men, and his arms were crossed. Where are you taking her? The stranger asked. Get your ass off my car, one of the thugs snapped, marching forward and pulling a knife out of his pocket. I said get your goddamn ass off my car, I'll cut your... It was as if the stranger had simply flexed a muscle. As he stood up, he reached out and shoved the thug's shoulder as if he'd been hit by a wrecking ball. The armed thug crashed to the ground, groaning, his shoulder dislocated. Oh, what the hell? Sorry, I forget my own strength sometimes. But you shouldn't point dangerous weapons at people, you know? The stranger asked. Who the hell do you think you are? I think you should let the girl go, the stranger snarled. In response, the men with firearms ran out and pointed their guns at him, ready to shoot him down where he stood. And I think you're full of shit. Kill this bitch! Victoria screamed as the guns went off. They fired multiple rounds until both pistols were now drained of ammo. Each shot struck their target as the stranger was pumped full of lead. But he didn't budge. All 6 of the men standing there all screamed in horror as the stranger simply brushed the bullets off of him. That stung, the stranger growled. My turn. He moved fast and as precise as the bullets he just survived. The stranger fired off a punch into the closest thug, and he dropped like a sack of rocks, unable to even scream. The other 2 made moves, but the stranger was already turning on them. With a swing of his leg, his shoe connected with both of their cheeks in a roundhouse kick that sent both tumbling backwards. The remaining 3 all charged at once. The stranger planted both feet once more and waited until one plunged his knife at his shoulder. He sidestepped and snapped the outstretched arm before sweeping the second man off his feet, grabbing him by the shin and throwing him into the third attacker, sending all of them crashing backwards like dummies. He brought all 3 down with such ease that Victoria could barely even catch his movements. His strength, speed, reflexes, and power all combined with his skills in martial arts were an unbelievable combination. But who was he? As he stood among the unconscious and moaning bodies of his victims, the stranger turned to face Victoria. Hey, you okay? He asked. Yeah, I think I'm... Just who are you? She demanded.
The stranger didn't answer but smiled. He then reached behind him and lifted his shirt a little so she could see his belt. Slowly she watched as the belt moved like a snake, unraveling itself around his waist and then fanning out like a long monkey tail. It couldn't be. Only one person she knew had a tail like that. Tomiki! It had been so long since I'd seen Victoria that I wasn't even sure what to say to her. Do I tell her that she looks good? Do I just say hello? I stood there smiling awkwardly. She rushed towards me as if to hug me, and I quickly stiffened, not sure what to do. To my relief, she stopped short and looked me over. Tomiki, it can't be you. You were gone so long, and when I last saw you, you were so much shorter. Oh my gosh, it's really you. Yeah, it's me. She quickly reached around and grabbed my tail, and I cried out in pain. I hated when anyone squeezed my tail. It hurt like hell. Ow! Damn it, that hurts! It really is you! Without a warning, she let go of my tail and hugged me tight around the middle. I gasped and grimaced in embarrassment. I was glad Hayato wasn't here to see this, and I was definitely glad Mom wasn't here to see it. She always loved to tease me about girls. Vicky, could you stop hugging me, please? She let go and gave me a cross look, clearly frustrated. I remember that she didn't like being called Vicky. I at least remembered that back from school with her. Tomiki, I missed you, and this is all you had to say? I blinked at her crossed expression. Had I said something wrong? Was I supposed to say something else? She suddenly smiled and shook her head. Yep, you're the same old Tomiki. Always get tongue-tied when a girl calls you out. Hey, I'm trying to be nice, I defended. Tomiki? Nice? Never thought I'd see the day. Used to be as mean as a rattlesnake, twice as venomous. Well, guess I realized I had to change that about myself, I said darkly, looking down. It's not what Mom wanted for me. At the mention of Belle, Victoria suddenly frowned and walked in for another hug, but I stopped her short. She nodded. Tomiki, I never got the chance to tell you just how sorry I am for that. Like I said back then, you weren't the one who killed her. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't yours either, she argued. And I know you blame yourself for that. Why else would you disappear for 3 years? I told you I'd be leaving to go on a training journey. Yeah, but 3 years is a really long time, Tomiki. Just be honest, it didn't feel right coming home, did it? I hated to admit it, but she was right. I'd stayed gone longer than I intended. Every time I thought about coming home, I'd stop myself and reason that it wasn't time, but in all honesty, I was afraid to see my mother's gravestone. I was afraid to face the city. I was afraid of confronting it all again. It was my fault. I might not have pulled the trigger, but I could have saved her. I could have told her how I felt about her from the beginning, and that's something I could never forgive myself for. I guess, I answered her. Either way, it's really good to have you back, Tomiki. Thanks, I answered honestly. She smiled at me, and for a moment I found myself blushing, not sure what to say to her. Her smile felt odd, like it made my chest feel weightless. Believe me, we needed you back. Things have gotten really bad here, Tomiki. What do you mean? I asked curiously. Tell you what, let me give you a lift home and I'll tell you everything, Victoria smiled, running towards her car. No need, I flew here. I'll just fly back home. She paused at that and looked floored. Wait, you flew? Long story, I groaned. Victoria shook her head, I guess assuming I meant fly by plane back into town or something. I let her. No, I want to treat you to dinner. Dad'll be glad to see you back. Oh, no! What's wrong? I panicked and ran towards her, expecting to see another thug or a bomb on her car, but instead, she was kneeling next to the car tire, holding her face in her hands. My tire's been slashed. Those bastards probably wanted to make sure I couldn't make a getaway. Now how the hell do I get home? Well, can't you call your dad to pick you up? I asked. He's still at work now, and even if he isn't at work, he's probably asleep. He sleeps all the time these days. He's too tired to do anything outside of work, she complained. I'll call an automobile service guy, see if they can't come down and replace my tire. Well, I mean, if you need a lift, I could give you one. She laughed and looked at me with a smirk. And that's nice, but you told me you just flew here. You don't even know how to drive, Tomiki. Well, I wasn't suggesting we drive. I can fly you home. Her smile vanished and she looked at me in surprise. Wait, you're serious? Why not? I can fly while carrying someone, I shrugged. No, I mean, you can actually fly? She giggled. Yes. Pull the other one. It's true. She raised an eyebrow at me and I huffed. I'll prove it and I'll give you a ride home. Okay, Tomiki. I'll humor you. Guess you need some more growing up to do, huh? Hey, so how do I do this? Do I click my heels? Think happy thoughts? I grit my teeth angrily. How dare she mock me? Look, if you don't want to lift... Okay, I'll stop. So, show me how to do this. She smiled innocently. I snorted. She was so annoying, making fun of me like that. Whatever. Master Hayato had taught me to practice patience, so I inhaled and nodded, pushing aside that anger. She walked towards me and I knelt down on one knee, and she stared at me concerned for a moment. Get on my back, I ordered. She blushed a moment and looked away. That's not what I thought you'd do. Huh? I asked. When you said you'd carry me, I thought you meant... What? I asked. Nothing, it's just, not the way I expected... You know what, never mind, sure. She laughed and wrapped her arms around my neck and lay herself against my back. Hold on tight, okay? I ordered. I'm ready, she announced. Right. Here we go. I built up my ki and launched myself upwards into the sky, and I heard her squeal in my ears. I flew upwards. Oh my God, we're flying! We're actually flying! She screamed. Not so loud, I'm right here. Sorry, just... Oh my God, we're flying! Told you, I snapped, still wishing she'd quiet down. But to my surprise, she wasn't acting guilty. She was laughing. She laughed happily, clinging to my neck tightly. I smiled at her bewilderment. It was kind of cute. Oh my God, I knew you were strong, but... Oh my God, we are flying, she squealed. All right, yeah, we're flying. Let's get you home. Hang on. I rocketed through the sky with the sound of her screaming with glee in my ear. And that was Chapter 6 of The Tale of Tomoki. And I think we will stop The Tale of Tomoki there and pick up with the Monster Club. So while I'm clicking over to the Monster Club, what did you guys think of that story? All right. Well, are Hannah and Aaron still there? Or did they bug out? I know that Aaron sometimes dips in and out, but I was wondering if Hannah's still there. Do you hint at what happened during the training? Yeah, we'll see some of that. All right, well, we're on Monster Club Chapter 16, I believe. This is after we did Asher's Memory. Yeah, I know. The chat's pretty quiet today, Colin. All right. Okay, Hannah's still here. That's good. That's good. Don't know about Aaron, though. All right, here we go. Chapter 16, written June 15th, 2013. Abraham and Asher walked through the door silently without a word. Abraham wasn't quite sure what to say to Asher after hearing what he had. He still knew so little about Asher, and that made him nervous, but at the same time, he couldn't help but find Asher's story a little comforting. He wasn't a soulless monster, just some beast. He did have feelings, and he did care, and this knowledge was somehow helpful. Abraham! Michelle came walking out of the den with a smile on her face. Well, I see Asher found you well. More or less, Abraham answered. He looked to see Solomon standing in the far corner, looking up with a sad smile. There was something in the old man's mind, but he wasn't letting anyone in on it. That's good to hear, Michelle commented. Listen, Asher, we need to talk. Abraham turned to see the smile on Asher's face had faded. Yeah, no kidding. Asher moved forward to stand in front of Michelle. I didn't know what happened at the store. Did he mention my dad? Asher, please, not here, Michelle hissed, eyeing Abraham. Abraham, come with me, please? Abraham turned to see Sarah standing in the hallway. She was motioning for him to come with her. Abraham was interested in the conversation going on in front of him, but there was a look of urgency on Sarah's face that told him that he really didn't want to hear it. He turned on his heel and hurried over to the concerned Drider. What's the deal with them? Abraham asked. Sarah sighed and started to move to the stairs. Abraham, try to understand that we all do trust you, but there are some secrets about this house you aren't ready to learn yet, Sarah explained. You mean like Asher's dad? At the sound of this question, Sarah froze in anticipation and anxiety. We don't talk about that around here, okay, Abraham? She whimpered. Abraham was shocked to hear genuine fear in her voice. Abraham chose to drop the subject. Sarah remained silent as they walked up the stairs past Katie's room and into Neil's room. She opened the door carefully and went in.
Abraham right behind her. Tamil was sitting on the bed, his head perked up at the sound of them entering. Abraham, you are unharmed, yes? He cried. Yeah, I'm fine, Tamil, Abraham said, but I'm a little confused. Sarah and Tamil both looked very concerned now. They appeared deep in thought, as if having to make a tough decision. How much to tell and how much not to? Sarah looked at Tamil, who sighed sadly and lay back on the bed. His life in danger as well today. Perhaps best he know now, Tamil offered. Sarah nodded her agreement. Abraham, the first thing you need to know is that, we've been pestered by the Dawnbringers for a while, Sarah said solemnly. Their organization was formed a long time ago with the sole purpose of hunting beings that they deem unworthy to live for the reason that they aren't human. Yeah, I know that, Abraham said impatiently. What I want to know is what they have against this club. Sarah looked at Tamil, who was frowning darkly. Well, I suppose you could say that Asher has something to do with that, Sarah said. The Dawnbringers were originally vampire hunters. Only about 10 years ago or so did they start hunting other creatures. This means that vampires are their primary enemies, and Asher has been their target. Before he was part of the club, Asher feed freely on innocent humans, Tamil elaborated. Dawnbringers track him to us and discover us. And ever since, the Dawnbringers have been trying to catch us off guard. That's why Asher protects us. He feels it's his responsibility, Sarah explained. So it's not his job or anything? No, I mean, certainly he's the strongest one of us, but he blames himself too much, Sarah admitted sadly. None of this is his fault. I'm certain the Dawnbringers would have found us anyway at some point, even if he hadn't come, but he has convinced himself that he's responsible for all this. Tried to tell him he's not. Did not listen, Tamil finished for her. Abraham took in all this and turned to Sarah again. So, okay, they're all after you. What do you do about it? Abraham asked. Well, usually they only send 1 or 2 assassins and Asher can handle them easily. But their attacks have become increasingly more frequent. And after Katie got kidnapped, we knew their action needed to be taken. And after what happened at the store today, I think Michelle understands that the time for waiting is over, Sarah explained. Okay, so we're not waiting anymore. What's the plan? Abraham asked. We don't know, Sarah admitted. That is why Michelle speak to Asher and Solomon about. Tamil threw in, a smile on his face. They're making plan. I hope that doesn't mean we're going to war with them or anything, Abraham said. Oh, no, nothing like that, Sarah cried. That would be really reckless and dangerous. So, we're probably going to relocate for a little while. Or Asher will leave for a while and go lead them off our trail. They consider him and Michelle a much higher threat than the rest of us. Sarah slowly made her way to the other side of the room and crossed her arms. It's just all too much, she said. Huh? Abraham asked. He suddenly heard Sarah sniff and sob. You know, first Katie gets abducted, then they follow her back home, and now they attack us at the store. It's just becoming... It's too much for me to handle, for any of us to handle. And then, of course, after what happened with Drake... Drake? Abraham asked. Tamil lurched up from the bed and shivered as Sarah covered her mouth with her hand, as if she'd uttered a swear word. Who's Drake? Abraham asked. My father. Abraham spun around to see Asher standing by the door. He looked very serious, and his red eyes were fixed on Abraham. Asher, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to... Sarah started to whimper, but Asher held up his hand. It's okay, Sarah. I understand, Asher explained. He then turned to Abraham and gave a soft smile that seemed to make Abraham feel uncomfortable. I'm also sorry to you that you had to deal with the Dawnbreakers. No, it's not your fault, Abraham assured him. All the same, this fight was never yours, he continued. The room fell silent for a long moment as everyone considered the events that had taken place. Abraham felt an odd sense of conflict building up within him. This wasn't his fight, but it had become his ever since joining the club. How Michelle? Tamil asked quickly, trying to help change the subject. She's fine, Asher answered, but she's worried, and I can't blame her. I am too. What are we going to do, Asher? Sarah asked. That's what we need to discuss. Calypso came back, so we're all meeting in the den. Asher turned on his heel and walked down the hallway. Tamil climbed out of bed and slowly walked to the door. Despite being blind, he moved to the door very well. Again, obviously well acquainted with his own room. Sarah walked out with them, and Abraham right behind her. When they got downstairs, Calypso was sitting on the couch silently with Michelle beside her. Katie was coiled up on the coffee table with Solomon standing in the corner. When Katie saw Sarah, she slithered across the carpet to her, and they hugged. Tamil found his way to the armchair and sat down. Michelle looked around at everyone and stood up. She looked to Asher, who nodded solemnly. As you all know, she began, today we were attacked by the Dawnbringer agents. This has been happening way too often. We tried to just ignore them and get along with our business, but I'm afraid that we can't do that anymore. Actions need to be taken. She shot another glance at Asher, whose expression hadn't changed. We've decided that it might be best if Asher leave for a while. The response to this was met with mixed feelings. Sarah and Katie both hugged each other sadly, as Tamil lowered his head angrily, but unable to speak against it. Calypso gasped and jumped to her feet. Leave? But Asher's the only one keeping them from killing us, Calypso cried. Michelle nodded sadly. But he's also what's drawing them to us. If he leaves for a while, the Dawnbringers might pursue him and leave us alone for a while so we can think of other options, Michelle stated. It's the best idea we could come up with, Asher said. I have an idea. Abraham spoke up. The entire house turned to look at him in surprise. Sorry. No. Go ahead, Michelle said. Well, I mean, what if we all left the house for a while, like all of us? Like take a vacation somewhere, Abraham offered. They would still follow us. I'm sure they'll find ways to track us, Michelle responded. I mean, hold on. Yes, they would, but you said they were tracking Asher, but what if Asher wasn't Asher? I mean, I remember the other day, it was like weeks ago before Katie got back. Sorry, I know I'm stumbling here, but just spit it out, Abraham. It's all right, Asher added. Asher, do you remember the prank you played on me where you turned into that little girl? Ashley? What about it? Well, couldn't you travel as her or something and throw them off our trail? They may be looking for your face, but they wouldn't recognize you if you looked like that. It might confuse them for a while, but they'd still figure us out, Asher argued. But a while is all we would need. We could go somewhere that they'd never expect us to, like the beach. Who ever heard of a vampire going to the beach? The entire house fell silent for a moment. Abraham, I really appreciate your input, but I'm afraid that's just too risky, Michelle said. Actually, it's not that crazy, Solomon spoke up. No Dawnbringer agent would ever expect to find a vampire on a beach. And if he's disguised as Ashley while they travel, they won't know it's him until it's too late to do anything about it. Solomon, are you serious? Michelle asked. Solomon just chuckled. Why not? I'll stay here and take care of the house while you're all gone, and you all can take a break from all this insanity. It won't be that bad, and if they do come by, they'll just find an empty house. They'll assume we've abandoned it. Michelle groaned in frustration. Okay, well, what about the rest of you? What do you think? The club all began to consider the option of a trip to the beach. Well, it might be fun to feel sand on my feet again, Tamil sighed. I'm in. Michelle then turned to Katie and Sarah. What about you two? You'll be the hardest ones to get there. What do you think? I've never been to the beach before, Katie admitted. Neither have I, Sarah giggled. We'd love to go. Michelle then turned to Calypso. I don't even need to ask you, do I? She asked. Calypso shook her head with a big smile on her face, and she finally turned to Asher. Well, it's up to you, Ash. What do you want to do? The beach is a very dangerous place for a vampire. How do you feel about this plan? Asher leaned against the wall and closed his eyes in thought. All eyes were on him now, waiting for his decision. My only concern is for this club's safety. I thought that by leaving, maybe it could be safe, but I'm also afraid that even if I did leave, this club would still be a target of the Dawnbringers, and I wouldn't be here to protect it. So maybe it is a good idea if we stick together, and Abraham has given a very interesting idea, and I think we should follow through with it. Even if it means turning into Ashley for a day or two? Or that you'll be exposed to the sun a great deal? Michelle retorted. Asher shrugged. I mean, worse things could happen. Being Ashley for a little while won't kill me, and as for the sun, I think sunblock and a little time in the shade would suffice. I could use a tan. The group laughed at his joke, even Michelle. All right. Seems the decision's been made for me. Well, guys, pack your things tonight because tomorrow afternoon we're going to the beach. And that was chapter 16. Let's move on to chapter 17. Raven Knight, quick question. Raven, are the evil monsters in the Monster Club universe? Yeah. All right, here we are. This one was written June 25th, 2013. Packing took almost no time at all, as no one really had that much they were looking to take with them. Everyone was excited for the beach, and we're all acting out of the ordinary. Sarah was giddy and trembling with excitement, running around looking for clothes to wear and helping others to pack their luggage, even taking the time to knit up and sew using her silks and swimsuits. Tamil stumbled around his own room wildly, trying to find his suitcase. When asked why he needed it, he would answer, "You take suitcase with you when you travel, yes?" Abraham found his response hilarious and pointed out that he didn't need to pack anything, just a towel. Michelle was in her room packing. She had been to the beach before and already had some idea of what she was doing. She had a small bag of towels, a book, and her swimsuit. Katie was by far the most reluctant to pack. She seemed a little reluctant, but in the end she couldn't hide her excitement at the thought of seeing it for the first time. Abraham didn't have much to pack, as he had very little to call his own. It was by far Calypso and Asher that were acting the most out of character. Calypso had never looked so excited before in her life, or at least as far as Abraham could tell. The thought of going to the ocean had affected her attitude and actions greatly. Rather than shyly shuffle around the house doing whatever she could to help, she was happy and bouncing around the house, asking everyone if they needed any assistance and trying her hardest to contain herself and failing at it. Asher, on the other hand, was nervous. He seemed kind of distant now and a lot more on edge. He was nervous about going to the beach, where there was no protection from the sun, and furthermore, he would have to turn into Ashley for the journey up there. He was also packing his bags, but along with swim trunks and clothes, he was packing monstrous amounts of sunblock, and Abraham even saw him squeeze in an umbrella. He was taking all the precautions necessary. Abraham, a moment before you all leave." Abraham turned to see Solomon standing by the door. He walked outside and joined him in the hallway. "What is it?" Abraham asked.
"Since my spirit is tied to this house, I can't go with you, but I trust all of you to stay safe and look out for one another,"
Solomon explained. "Yeah, right," Abraham said with a grin.
"Abraham, you may not be a monster or a supernatural being, but you are, without a doubt, one of us."
He reached into his pocket and pulled out 7 tickets for a train.
"Catch the 11:45 train. It'll take you to Key West. If all runs smoothly, you'll reach your destination by 1:30.
Abraham nodded and stuck the tickets in his back pocket. "I'll take good care of them," Abraham said. He didn't bother asking Solomon how he got the tickets. There were just some secrets about this old man he didn't want to know the answer to. And besides, he's always thought it best not to look a gift horse in the mouth. Solomon suddenly became very serious and leaned close to Abraham.
"Listen, child. There are 3 things you need to keep in mind on this trip. The first is that the full moon is only a week away. Michelle will be acting a little odd as this comes closer. Try to keep her calm and keep her focused on the beach, not on the lunar calendar. We'll deal with the full moon when you return. Second, Katie is just starting to get used to you, but don't push your luck. She's got a long way to go before she trusts you. I suggest keeping some distance between you two."
"I understand," Abraham whispered.
"And finally, Asher is walking into a very dangerous territory going to the beach. I almost don't want him to go, but I don't want him to miss out either. Listen, keep an eye on his condition. If he starts burning, or tiring out, or sweating really badly, get him out of the sun and somewhere shady fast."
Abraham nodded, considering the possibility of messing up or the thought of Asher dying. It was enough to make him shiver. "Hey, Abraham, you coming?" Abraham looked to see that everyone had gathered downstairs. They were all carrying large bags and were waiting on him. Abraham couldn't understand the need for bags as big as they were carrying. "I'm here. What's up with the giant bags?" Michelle looked around the room at everyone without answering him. "Okay, we're almost ready to go. Abraham, you have our train tickets, and we have our supplies, tents, food. Now there's only 2 things left to do. First, Katie and Sarah, take these." Michelle handed Katie and Sarah the 2 giant suitcases. Both had wheels on the bottom for them to roll. "When we get to the train station, you 2 will hold these on either side of you to cover your lower half as we move. The rest of you will stand behind them to see if we can't cover the rear. Once we reach the ticket booth, it'll be up to Calypso and Tamil to make a distraction while you 2 board. Any questions?" "No," Katie answered. "It's risky, but we understand." "Excellent. And lastly," Michelle turned to Asher, who was standing behind the group looking quite nervous. "You, sir, need to get changed." Asher grimaced and nodded.
"Fine, give me a sec."
Asher breathed in slowly and then shot a dangerous glare at Abraham and Sarah. "And don't laugh." Suddenly, Asher's body began to turn darker and darker until it looked like a living shadow. The shadow began to shrink and remold itself until standing in the middle of the room where Asher had been was the small form of Ashley. "Okay, I'm ready." "Not yet, you're not. Go put on your dress and hat. We got to keep the sun off of you." Ashley sighed and walked off to go get changed. "Abraham, while we're going there, Ashley's going to pretend to be your little cousin. Keep to that story, got it?"
"Right," Abraham said nervously, though the thought was funny. He also feared what Asher would think of this plan.
A few moments later, Ashley had walked back in, wearing a large rimmed hat and a little dress. She looked adorable, but also very pissed. The others were stifling giggles. "What's so funny?" Ashley snapped. "Nothing," Michelle smiled. "But we do need to get going now." "How do we get there?" Abraham asked. The question had been on his mind for a while as to how they get to the train station. It had to be about 30 miles away. How would they get there without arousing suspicion? Solomon suddenly stepped beside Abraham and dropped a set of keys in his hand. "There's a van out back. Used to be mine. It should have enough gas to get you there, but maybe not back." "Abraham, you're the one who looks the most normal. I guess you'll drive," Michelle said. The truth was that Abraham had never driven before. However, the looks on all their faces was too much to resist. Everyone was so excited about this trip, and he couldn't let them down. "All right, let's hit the road. How hard can it be?" Apparently, it was very hard. Abraham had nearly wrecked twice, and everyone in the car was clutching their hearts, terrified of the prospect of imminent death. When they had finally made it to the train station, Abraham couldn't help but blush and feel embarrassed as his friends all threw themselves out of the car, practically kissing the ground. "Come on, it wasn't that bad," Abraham said, trying to retain some dignity. "Yes, it was," Katie snapped. "Abraham, don't bother getting your license, because no one will let you get behind the wheel ever," Sarah laughed. "Why does the world spin underfoot?" Tamil teetered on his legs, trying hard to stay balanced. Abraham ignored their complaining and motioned for them all to follow him, hiding the blush on his face. The group made their way to the train station. Sarah and Katie both pulled out the giant suitcases and put large tarps over them to cover their rears, and walked with them on either side of their bodies. The cases did a decent job of keeping their lower halves hidden, but it didn't stop people from looking and wondering what they were doing with such large luggage. The others were getting their own share of attention. Calypso and Tamil were both the subject of a lot of stares and whispers. Calypso couldn't hide her blue skin, and Tamil's bandages were very easy to see. They tried their best to act natural and continue onward. Michelle and Abraham didn't get much attention as they looked rather normal, but Ashley had less luck as plenty of people commented on how cute she looked. Ashley would simply smile and say thanks to everyone who said this, but it was clear there was frustration behind her voice. "Just bear with it, Asher," Michelle whispered. "We'll be there soon enough." "Don't talk to me until we're on the train," Ashley hissed back. She rushed forward and took Abraham's hand and walked with him, playing the part of a little cousin or sister very well. "Tickets." Abraham stopped at the front of the line and reached into his pocket for the tickets. "There are 7 of us." The man took his tickets and suddenly frowned. "These tickets look ancient. Not even from this decade." Suddenly Abraham realized that these were tickets from long ago, when Solomon was still alive to get them himself. He'd messed up. I'm sorry, young man. These tickets aren't acceptable." Suddenly Ashley pulled on Abraham's sleeve and smiled. "Can I ride your back?" she asked. Abraham nodded and lifted Ashley up onto his back, giving her a piggyback ride. She then smiled and stared at the ticket man, her eyes glowing in a familiar, hypnotic way. "The tickets are fine, mister," she whispered. The man stared at her eyes and glazed over. "The tickets are fine." "Let us get on the train, please," Ashley said. "Of course. You may board." He stepped aside. Abraham carried Ashley onto the train car with the others following closely behind. "Nice work, Asher," Michelle whispered, and Ashley giggled. "I've been at it a long time, Michelle," Ashley replied. "Well, thanks to you, we didn't need to cause a scene just to get in," Michelle commented. "Shame, too. Tamil had brought fireworks for that," Calypso said. "We saved them for beach," Tamil said kindly. He had his hand on Sarah's arm as she escorted him onto the train. Katie brought up the rear and slithered onto the car, closing the door behind her and locking it. "Okay, we won't be bothered now," Katie said assuredly. All of them gathered in the middle of the train car and sat down. They were tired but happy. They'd finally managed to make it, and their next stop would be the beach. Everyone was itching with excitement and anticipation. Abraham looked around and noticed that Katie had taken a seat in the far back. He made sure the others were preoccupied with conversation before going back to take a seat across from her. Hey, he said. Katie looked up at him and gave a stern gaze. "What?" she replied. There was an awkward silence for a moment. "Did you need something?" she asked. "Just wanted to know if you wanted some company," Abraham replied. Katie looked at him and then out the window as the train was pulling out of the station. "Why do you care?" she asked harshly. "I haven't been especially welcoming towards you." "Well, I mean, you're still part of the family, right?" Abraham asked. Katie gave a small laugh. "Listen, Abraham, right? The others all consider you one of us. So I will too for their sake. But I don't trust you. I'll never trust you," Katie stated. "Well, why don't you trust me?" Abraham asked. Katie suddenly glared at him darkly. "Boy, you have some lousy tact," she sneered. "Fine, I don't trust you because you're human. And you're male. And you hate me for that? I've been surrounded by your kind since the day I was hatched. You're all nothing but trouble. And I have yet to be proven otherwise, Katie muttered. Well, maybe I can be the one to prove you wrong, Abraham said hopefully. Katie laughed darkly. I doubt it, she snapped. She closed her eyes and leaned against the window. Abraham got up to leave. But I hope you can, she'd whispered almost inaudibly. What did you say? Abraham asked. I didn't say anything. Now let me sleep, she hissed before turning away. Abraham knew what he'd heard, though, and he was now more determined than ever to reach her. But that would have to wait. It looked like Sarah was trying to sort through luggage, and he needed to help her. When the train finally came to stop, the group held back for a while. Michelle had explained that it wasn't safe for them all to leave with a crowd of people. It was just that they waited for the crowds to clear first. After about 10 minutes, Abraham led the group off the train. Ashley was riding his back like before, just in case they ran into anyone who wanted to ask questions or stare. Michelle walked around behind them with Sarah and Katie following, carrying their enormous luggage. Tamil and Calypso followed behind, keeping their eyes out for a place to slip away if things got ugly. They were all working in sync. Okay, guys, we'll be at the beach soon, so go find a bathroom and change into your beach clothes, Michelle announced. The group scattered and headed off to the bathrooms. The only ones who didn't leave were Abraham, Tamil, and Ashley, who were all fine in what they had on. After a while, the others did return. Michelle was wearing a bikini, and so was Calypso. One look at Calypso caused Ashley to blush and turn away, which looked incredibly odd. Sarah and Katie had both put on bikini tops, but their lower halves were wrapped with a strange sash to cover themselves. The side of their smooth skin was breathtaking, and Abraham couldn't help but gaze. What's wrong with you? Michelle asked. Nothing, Abraham answered, trying to regain his composure. And stop staring like an idiot. Let's get to the beach already, Michelle laughed. The trip to the beach would only take about 20 minutes. However, they wanted to avoid the populated areas, so instead the trip was much longer than that. With all the sand spurs, crabs, and other nuances waiting in the sand, it felt like they would never reach the sandy shores. However, as they made their way to the beach, everyone was growing excited to the point of bursting. Calypso took the lead and sprinted ahead of the rest as the sound of the surf could be heard. The rest ran up to keep up with her, but this was a hard thing to do as Calypso seemed unnaturally drawn to the sound and the smell of the shifting tides. When she made it over the hillside, she gasped. Oh my God. She fell to her knees on the sand and wept slightly, staring in awe at the sight before her. The sea was gorgeous. The tripling tide ran across the powdered white sand and licked its edge. The rocks and formations surrounded the area and dotted the crystal clean waters. The sun's light reflected off the turning tides, and waves like diamonds floated in the ocean. The reflecting roar of the waves was breathtaking. The clear skies covered everything as far as the eye could see. The sand tickled their feet and welcomed them in its warm and beautiful shores. As everyone caught up, their reactions were all very similar to Calypso's. Michelle walked down the sand and smiled a big smile, gazing from the beach to her friends. Katie and Sarah wandered down the sand with Tamil, holding onto Sarah's arm. Tamil could feel the sand under his feet, and he smiled, staring blankly around, as if he could take in the sight into his being rather than see it. Abraham carried Ashley down on his back, and she looked happy, but she also looked tired. The sun's rays beat down on her, and despite the big hat she was wearing, the heat and the light was starting to affect her, making her weaker. You okay, Asher? Abraham asked nervously. I'll be fine. I just need rest, Ashley answered, resting her head on Abraham's shoulder. Abraham watched as the others all got to work setting down beach towels and umbrellas. One was quite large so that Ashley could fit under it. Abraham walked Ashley to the umbrella and set her down underneath it. She relaxed and looked out at the water. Hey, Abraham, Ashley whispered sadly. What's it like to walk under the sun? To embrace the light of day freely? Abraham didn't know how to answer that, but only stood watching her. You know, there was a time when I could walk in it too, until the right was stripped from me by that cursed bite. Yeah, I'm sorry, Asher, Abraham muttered. Ashley laughed. Don't worry about it. I'm just being melodramatic. Go enjoy it. Ashley reached into her own bag and pulled out a book and began to read. The coastal winds whipped at her dress and hat. Abraham nodded and turned to look at the others. Calypso was already in the water, swimming and splashing with her tail. She was clearly having the time of her life. Tamil was on the edge of the shore with Katie. He had his bandaged arms in the water and was feeling it, as if the touch of the ocean was a new experience for him, which it probably was. Katie was giggling and spraying water in her face, which caused him to gasp in shock. Michelle and Sarah were wading through the surf and letting the water wash over their legs as they laughed and splashed each other. It seems like they're all having fun already, Abraham commented. Don't you want to enjoy yourself? Ashley shook her head. This is enjoying myself. Don't worry, when the sun goes down, I'll come out and join you. But for now, I will wait, Ashley assured him. Now get out of here. Okay, but I better not come back and find a pile of ash where you're sitting, Abraham laughed. I've got sunscreen. Now get out of here. Abraham chuckled and ran out to the water to join the others. Ashley watched him run off and then shot a glance at everyone. There were smiles on everyone's faces. They all seemed happy and carefree. That was what he really wanted to see. All right, and that was chapter 17. And we will save chapter 18 for next time. Hope you guys have been enjoying this story. What did you guys think of that? I'll pull up Raptor Girls while we're waiting. Yeah, so I will say this about that last chapter. Many of you probably noticed some big holes in the narrative. Like, if they live in mountainous areas, how did they get to Key West so quickly? Why did they take the train? How did they hide so well? Like, all these other things. Why aren't there people on the beach that they need to worry about? And the truth is, like I said, I wrote this story back in 2015. I was still very much a young author. I was not as skilled at writing at the time, and so this story definitely shows its age. It's not as good as what I'm writing now, because now I'm very, very more careful about finding those holes and filling them and making sure I answer for everything. Here, it was very early on in my writing career, so definitely I made a lot of mistakes, and you can probably see them. Someday I'll probably come back and rework the story and edit some of that stuff, but you can definitely tell there were some problems with it, and I acknowledge those problems. It's areas. It is a mark of how young I was as a writer. Back then, it was 2015, right? So I was very young. I was still partway through college at the time. Raven, I've got a logical explanation. Anime. You're not wrong. Actually, let me do this real quick. I will share something with you guys. It's kind of cool. Mika and I may have fallen out as friends, but she did draw a lot of art for Monster Club. She tried to draw art for key moments in the story, and there were 2 images that she drew for this, so I will share them with you. First, the image when Sarah, Tamil, and Abraham meet in the room to talk. She drew this. So that was Mika's art. You can see Tamil laying on the bed, just kind of chilling. You can see Sarah, that's her side profile, and you can see Abraham looking in confusion between the two. So you kind of get an idea of how they both look. One of the problems that Mika always had in her drawing was she always made guy hair look almost exactly alike. She was never very good at drawing different style of male hair. You were thinking they were either in Virginia or someplace. Well, my original idea was to put them in a place like West Virginia, honestly. But again, I was a foolish writer. I didn't think about the distance it would be between West Virginia and Florida. But yeah, that was the first picture. Wow, chat is just dead, but everyone's kind of leaving anyway, so it's fine. The second picture was the one she drew when they got to the beach. This one was a bit different. Here it is. And I'll fill up the screen with it so you can all see it pretty well. Okay, so you can see here, in the center you've got Calypso. She is the one who is the most happy to be here. You got Sarah and Katie over in the far corner here. I feel almost like Mika was trying to squeeze Katie in there. You got Tamil, who's looking around kind of blind, and you'll notice he's grabbing onto Sarah because he can't see, obviously. You got Michelle on the other side, who's just kind of amused by all this, and then you got Abraham, who's carrying Ashley on his back like before, and they both look a little annoyed by the situation. But yeah, that was the beach image that she drew. She was a talented artist for all of her problems. She She and I had our falling out, but she was a talented artist. Asher didn't get his umbrella out until they got there. But anyway, that is that image. So now y'all know. You can change the setting to North Carolina. That might not be a bad idea. Anyway. Well, done with that. Let's get back to reading. We are about to finish up the Raptor Girls reading because this is the last chapter I have written, other than 2 short stories, which I'm not going to read tonight. I'm going to save those for another time. So this one is Everyday Life with Raptors, Part 13, written May 22nd, 2022. So, here we go. The truck ride to the camp was long, bumpy, and it left Blue feeling weak. However, what really played on her heart was the entire courtroom scene. She had sat through each miserable portion of that trial, hoping that by the end they'd walk away together and happy. And they were together now, true. Alpha in the front, driving the truck to camp, with Charlie asleep in the back, sucking her thumb childishly, with Delta and Echo waiting for them. But she couldn't say that she was happy. That prosecutor, the things he had said had her on edge. Every word had been poison, but what hurt worse was what he'd questioned Alpha and his answer. She wanted to believe it was a lie, an act. There was no way Owen actually didn't care about them. "You been quiet, Blue. You okay?" Owen asked, glancing back. Blue nodded. "All's well, sir." "I doubt it. Do you want to talk about it?" Blue didn't answer at first. She stared down at her feet silently until giving a long sigh. "Alpha, Owen, sir." "Owen's fine, Blue. The things you said, the stuff that happened at the trial, I told you. I had to say what was necessary to help you girls," Owen assured her. "I know, you did say that, but what I want to know is, how do you really feel about us?" Blue asked. Owen stiffened some of the question. "You took us under your wing only about a year or 2 ago, and you've been good to us. I trust you with my life, sir. I always have, but if you don't see us as weapons, do you only see us as soldiers, or..." Owen didn't answer at first. He just kept staring ahead, not flinching, not speaking. Blue hung her head darkly and sighed. "Sorry, that was inappropriate, and the Navy asked me to work with you girls because I used to train dogs when I was a cop with the LAPD. They thought those skills were sufficient for training you," Owen finally answered. "To the Navy at the time, you were nothing but dogs, animals to be trained for war function. Hoskins was the officer who was meant to oversee the whole project. My liaison with the island that bred you and the Navy, he commissioned your training. He's the reason you're with me now." "We were just animals?" Blue hissed, her fist clenching tightly. "That's what I was told. That I was being reassigned to work with an experimental case to see if liminal soldiers could be used in combat situations. They even gave me tools and gear for the express purpose of handling you. Reins, collars, even tasers," Owen admitted. "They what? Of course, I never planned to use them. From the moment I met you girls, I knew you weren't animals. You weren't dogs," Owen snapped, interrupting Blue. "That trial was bound to happen. It was inevitable. The incident on the island was just an excuse to kickstart it early, but regardless of when, it was bound to happen at some point." "But why?" Blue asked desperately. "That's what I don't understand. Why put us through it?" "Because the world doesn't understand you girls yet, or any of the liminals," Owen replied. "There are those who think you're real autonomous people with your own rights and sentience, like Hammond and myself, and then there's people like Hoskins who see all of you as, well, animals with a humanoid appearance. It's disgusting. It's like when we were..." She started to think of the island, how the scientists and doctors had watched them, how they'd stood idly by when Echo challenged Blue for leadership, how they'd been more interested in the symptoms of Charlie's flu than actually treating it, how they'd watched them eat, sleep, and even pee while just chatting away and talking like they couldn't be heard or understood. And of course, there were the others too. There were other liminals on the island that she could occasionally hear scream or roar or cry in the dark. But she would never be able to find them beyond their paddock. All of them, like her and her sisters, were treated like lab rats, testing lizards. She cringed and tried hard to bite back tears. "The island," Owen said darkly, "I can't say there are many people in this world who will see you any different than the way those lab folks saw you." "But you don't see us that way. Back at the trial, I said what I had to. But the truth is, Blue, that I care for all 4 of you girls," he said. "I gave them the answer they needed so that it would keep you with me. If I truly thought you were nothing but animals or weapons, I would have reassigned myself in a heartbeat. You think I want to put up with Delta's attitude all the time? Blue giggled and nodded. You're right. You're right, Alpha. I'm glad. For what? Owen asked as he turned the van up a dirt road towards the camp. Owen, we never knew our parents. You know, we never met them. I think the scientists took them away from us when we were hatchlings, so we don't remember much. Owen didn't reply, but stared ahead, his eyes focused. Yeah, I know that. So when we met you, you were the first parent we ever had. I think Delta treats you the way she does because she's scared of having a figure like that. She hates it because she always wanted to know who our family was, and instead she gets you. I'm sorry about that, Owen said sadly. There's no need to be sorry, Owen. Though Owen didn't perk up. There's plenty of reason, but that's not important. Well, my point was, regardless of how Delta acts, we're all happy to have you as our Alpha. We're glad you stood up for us, and I kind of understand why you did what you did back at the trial. The truck finally came to a stop, and Owen opened the door. It was night out, and the camp was quiet. The welcome cabin was in front of them, and a long dirt road led deeper into the camping area. Owen opened the doors for the girls. Blue poked Charlie, who lifted her head. Morning already? Time to go find Echo and Delta, Blue urged. We've been gone long enough, and Alpha's gonna take us home. We'll sleep at the camp tonight and leave tomorrow. I'm sure you both need some rest first, Owen offered, walking them to the mess hall. First, some food. The sound of food perked up Charlie, who instantly forgot her sleepiness and darted ahead towards the mess hall. However, as Blue started to follow, Owen paused as he felt his phone vibrate. Owen? It's nothing. Owen ignored it, not caring about the caller. As he followed her to the mess hall, he looked to see Delta at a table with Echo and 3 other staffers, a deck of cards on the table. Delta? Echo? Both girls spun to see Owen, Blue, and Charlie. Echo gasped and stood up and come to hug Blue and Charlie. Delta didn't do the same, but she smiled. Took you enough time, she smiled. Everything okay out? Everything work? More or less. You playing poker? The staffers are trying to teach us, Echo explained. Delta's getting it. I'm not quite following. Owen laughed, but was interrupted by his phone again. He groaned and looked at the name of the caller and hung up again. Is everything okay? Charlie asked. It'll be fine, Owen laughed. Why don't you go ask her out for dinner? Charlie needed no more directive than that. Delta watched her go and then frowned at Owen. So? We're in the clear? We get to stay together? Sorry to disappoint you, Owen smirked. Blue grinned and Delta shrugged. Yeah, well, maybe next time, she said. Besides, maybe you're growing on me or something. She glanced back at Echo and they both shared an understanding nod. What on earth happened to you while I was... Oh, for the love of... His phone was ringing again. He finally picked it up and snarled. I have to take this. Is it someone important? Blue asked. Nothing to worry about. You girls eat and relax. I'll step outside and take this. Owen checked his phone and sneered at the caller ID. Stepping outside and leaving the girls to their dinner and card game, he answered and put the phone to his ear. You better have a good reason for calling me after the stunt you pulled, Hoskins. We need the Raptors now! A very uncharacteristically panicked and out of breath Hoskins cried. Owen's eyes narrowed. Look, Hoskins, I don't know what scheme you've cooked up, but my girls aren't... Would you shut up and listen, Grady? He practically yelped. This isn't a joke, or a plan, or a scheme, or anything. This is real. The island's compromised. One of the assets is loose. She's... One of the assets? Owen hissed darkly. Which one? I can't answer that. Hoskins, what the hell got out? Classified, Grady. Heavily classified. Goodbye, Owen threatened. It's one of the newer ones! She was brought on after you adopted the Raptors. She's more than we could handle. She somehow figured out how to escape. I don't know how, but she did it. She's been causing chaos all over the island, unlocking paddocks and letting all the other assets loose. She's stealing a boat and making her way to the mainland. If those assets get loose on the mainland, if she starts a full-scale riot stateside, or if someone gets hurt, it'll be the end of everything we've worked for, Owen muttered. How deadly are we talking? What's the potential carnage here? Grady, Hoskins whimpered. She is a bloody psychopath. I don't know what Wu did to her, but he's made her a murdering machine. Half the island security and staffing were torn apart. I only just got off the island myself to call you. Is she provoked? Can she be talked down? Owen asked. You're not hearing me, Hoskins cried. She's not killing out of defense or for her freedom. She's doing it for fun. It's a sport. We can't reason with it. We have to put her down. Immediately. This is precisely what your Raptor squad was formed for. You want to prove to me and the rest of the world they're worth keeping? You suit them up and get to my location as fast as you can. Owen stood stock still as he stared off into space, imagining what he meant. This was no ordinary liminal or demi-human criminal. This was a psychotic killing machine. Wu and his scientists likely did to her what he did to the girls.
And if that's the case, she wouldn't be merciful. And there's a chance the girls might even empathize with her. That would make killing her harder. But Hoskins was right. The secrets of that island could jeopardize everything. Not just for the Interspecies Exchange Act, but for Owen and the girls. He didn't see any alternative. Where are the rogue assets expected to make land? They're expected to land somewhere between Georgia and Florida, near the Keys, Hoskins replied. I'm calling in favors from the National Guard. We're going to get there first and evacuate any potential target towns and beach resorts. Get your girls here now, Grady. The line went dead, leaving Owen with a cold and horrid pit in his stomach.
All right, and that was part 13. And unfortunately, that is as far as I've gotten in the story. There are 2 short stories called Everyday Life with Raptors, The Full Moon Story, and Raptors Read a Story. One of them is basically a prequel story, kind of a cute side story that Hannah asked me to write. And then the other is a fun story I wrote as a joke. But the last time I read a story like these, or read joke stories like these, the chat's response was very immature. So we're not going to risk that right now. Maybe another day, but not right now. Now, we actually still have some time, so while I think of what to read next, let me know what you guys thought. Okay. I know y'all want more, and I'm sorry. I've told Hannah that I will work on the next chapter very soon. But I have to beat her in a contest first. Let me run to the bathroom real quick, and I'll tell you what I can do before we end the stream. All right, I am back. All right, anyway, so now that I'm back, here are the options. I can read another chapter of Priceless, the Star Wars story. I can read the second chapter of that, since some of y'all seem to like it. I can read the next chapter of The Tale of Tomaki, if you like that. Or I can read the next chapter of Monster Club. Those are the 3 options. So how about this? Let me go ahead and put a poll out there for you guys. That might make things a little easier. All right, I put a poll up, and I'll give it 1 minute. I'll give it 1 minute. Got 13 votes. It's probably going to stay this way. All right. Looks like it's stuck there, so Priceless won. Very interesting. Very interesting. All right. That was a close vote, though. Although I'm a little sad Tomiki didn't get any votes. That's a little sad, but okay. Huh. I guess Tomiki's not as popular as I thought. All right. Well, let's go to Priceless Chapter 2. All right. Let's see. And there it is, Chapter 2. Found it. Okay. All right. So let's read Priceless Chapter 2, written May 3rd, 2023. Space made Leah Tai feel small. The inky blackness of space filled the enormous cockpit viewport of her starship, and the stars that peppered the never-ending darkness only seemed to wink at her, reminding her of just how grand the galaxy was, and how ultimately insignificant she was. Leah Tai sat in her cockpit chair, her large black eyes gazing out, reflecting the galaxy in their gaze, and she just stared, her mind wandering to what lay beyond those winking stars. She felt her breathing slowing and her heartbeat pounding in her ears as she became more and more conscious of herself, of her presence, of her size. Leah didn't like to feel small, but in the face of the universe, it was all she could feel. She turned her gaze away for a moment, closing her eyes to get her thoughts back on track. "Master?" An upbeat and synthetic robot voice chimed merrily. "Are you finished with your meditations?" "I was just distracted, Niner," she said with a grimace. From behind her, Leah heard the soft humming of an anti-gravity engine whirring as a floating dish-shaped droid hovered along and landed on the side of the co-pilot seat. He was painted black with a blue line horizontally drawn over the center of his body. He had a large blue ocular photoreceptor situated on the side of his discus-like body, and on his underside were three long, three-digit appendages with working claws on the bottom that opened and closed on occasion, with two forward-facing two-digit appendages that acted almost like hands as it seemed to help emote with the droid spoke. It had a single antenna poking up from the top that helped it with range communication, and, hidden inside its plate-sized body, were various other little surprises. Though it had no face to speak of, the ocular blue photoreceptor that functioned as an eye trained on Leah. "But Master," it said with a small jovial voice, "my research indicates that moments of quiet meditation are healthy for the mind, and it is imperative that bioforms of all kinds do well from indulging in such moments." "You're referring to rest, Niner, and I slept plenty already. I need to focus right now." ID 9990 was a seeker probe droid, nicknamed Niner for all the nines in his designation. Niner had taken to the nickname the same way he took everything. Pleasantly. For some reason, Niner always responded with pleasant and friendly tones and mannerisms, even if he didn't actually feel happy at the time. This made Niner somewhat difficult, as he might try to say something that came off as pleasant, but in truth he was blisteringly mad. Perhaps it had something to do with the Vox unit she installed in it so she could have someone to talk to. Maybe it was faulty, or perhaps Niner just didn't have any other means of expressing himself. Whatever the case, she'd grown used to it. What she was still coming to terms with was Niner's odd interest in trying to learn the habits and necessities of organic life forms, as if he was fascinated by them somehow and wanted to be one, and thought that if he could learn how they function, he might turn into one. Fat chance of that. But who was she to ruin this little guy's dreams? "Ah, as you say, Master," he replied helpfully before hovering to the real chair of the cockpit, and then inserting his probe appendage into the databank hole to begin integrating with the ship. "What is our destination?" "We're going to DU. Pull up what you can on the planet," Lee answered. "Accessing Republic and Imperial databanks now," Niner answered. After a few minutes, Niner removed himself from the terminal and hovered his way back to the cockpit, co-pilot chair. "So what'd you get?" "DU is the chief planet in the DU system, a system predominantly owned by the Hutt cartels. It is a key planet in the Shag-Payball hyperlane, where it connects to the world of Yasilia for trade purposes. It's primarily an industrial hub that makes its living and economy off of slave labor for the Empire, and side trade of volcanic minerals and stone, as well as smelting material to the Republic.
Currently, the Angeliac Khajiit holds dominion on the local governments. The planet, as a result, has no allegiance to either the Galactic Republic or the Sith Empire. Anything on local geology or atmosphere? It's an industrial world. The planet is relatively young, with a thin volcanic crust that makes the surface inhospitable. All cities and places of commerce are built on floating cities and dwellings. So, it's like Mustafar. In a sense, Niner answered, but the cities are more akin to what you've seen on Camino or Bespin. In terms of social culture, I would classify it more on the level of a world like Droman Kaas, Master. Niner replied with a chirp of glee, although I do hope it is a little less bleak than that world. Oh yeah, you didn't like it there much, did you? I could hardly stand it, replied with an unfitting and comical sort of glee. Are there any planets we've gone to that you actually like? Leah asked curiously. I think I was fond of Fallujah, Master. Fallujah? That jungle nightmare world? What the hell do you like about that place? The various types of fauna and flora were most exquisite, and I gathered much useful data about the biosphere and ecology of the world, and I was able to... All right, I get it, Leah groaned. Boy, you talk a lot, you know that? Always eager to please, Master. Yeah, I know. Leah went back to focusing on the controls to fire at the hyperdrive and send them to DU. Meanwhile, Niner hovered about, handling odd tasks and calculations to help the ship's navicomputer. Might I inquire, Master? You said that you were hunting a hut? That seems rather dangerous, Niner pointed out. How will you move the carcass into the ship's cargo bay for delivery? Huts are rather heavy. I'm not taking him alive, Lee answered coldly. Instructions were to kill, not capture. If Niner took issue with this, he, as usual, didn't show it. I see. Well, have you considered the reality that going after an infamous crime lord might prove hazardous to your own health, Master? He asked. Yes, the thought has crossed my mind, Leah answered with a smirk. Then as your loyal droid and assistant, I must caution you against this course of action. It would upset me greatly if something were to befall you, Master, Niner said as usual in his usual positive tone. Your warning is noted, Leah replied. And ignored, I assume? Correct. Splendid! The droid hovered off to some other corner of the ship to get along with his work. He was likely frustrated, though his tone didn't show it. Leah didn't take offense, though. Niner cared about her, though he sometimes did a poor job of demonstrating this. She'd gotten used to this presence over time of the past 4 years of bounty hunting on the Blood Raptor 2. Her ship, the Blood Raptor 2, or nicknamed the Raptor, was a YV-560 Carillion light freighter. 30 meters in length and with a saucer diameter of 22.5 meters, the ship was perfect for all her needs. It could go 950 light years per hour, which wasn't as fast as some of the newer models out there, but it was reliable and also had an excellent planet scanning capability, which made finding targets and hostiles that much easier. Plus, the size was helpful. The ship could hold up to 7 people comfortably, and since it was only her and Niner, that made plenty of space for her to wander around and relax. She smirked as she glanced back at the cockpit corridor behind her, dimly lit but visible. Some bounty hunters buy ships that help them. Some are gifted ships by employers or huts. But the Raptor was one that she earned. The memory brought a smile to her face, but now wasn't the time for sentimentality. She had a job to do, and Garrick was paying well. Though, to be fair, she might have agreed even if the pay was half of what it was. Getting to DU wasn't an issue. It was in hut space, just like Salacia. However, Salacia didn't show up on most star charts, a hidden world just out of the way of standard trade routes and hyperdrive highways. And because of that, it took a little longer to program the nav computer to find a safe route to DU without being able to put in a logical starting point to get to the destination. After some fiddling, readjusting, and flying about aimlessly, the ship finally took off with a soft howl into hyperspace. Nothing else to do but wait for the ship to arrive at DU now. Leah got up from the cockpit and walked down the corridor, turning at the main corridor path. She sighed and turned to the main holding, looking to see if Niner was there. After seeing he was not, she dropped down on the circular sofa against the wall and lay back, adjusting her head tendrils so she wasn't squishing any of them, and she closed her eyes. Niner was right about one thing. She did want to rest. She'd just never admit that to him openly. Leah breathed slowly, focusing on the gentle intake and outtake of breath. The subtle, faded flashes of the ship's lights and blinking notifiers dimly lit the darkness of her eyelids for a while, but none of that would distract her. She kept focusing on her breathing, in and out, in and out. She always tried to meditate before a big job, and this was no different. Just go through the routine and treat this like any other bounty. In and out, in and out. Suddenly, the sound of an alert filled her ears. Leah's eyes burst open as the lights in the main hold went out, leaving nothing but the dim emergency red lights on, giving off a terrifying crimson glow everywhere. She climbed to her feet fast and ran down the corridor. "Niner!" she cried. "Niner, status!" She waited for a response. There was nothing. The power must have gone down, killing the intercom. The ship lurched as it was pulled out of hyperspace by the loss of the hyperdrive generator. She cursed during her breath and ran to the engineering bay to check the problem. The red light made things far creepier, but it was nothing she couldn't handle. The doors were locked tight and didn't open automatically as they were supposed to. Another indication of power failure. She reached for the keypad by the door and punched in the open code. As it slid open, she ran inside to check the hyperdrive, then breathed a sigh of relief to see it was undamaged. Thank goodness. If it's intact, we can still get out of here. She then turned to the engines, checking to see where the problem was. Where the hell was Niner? He should be here helping her. Niner, if you can hear me, get over here, she shouted. In response, she heard the sound of crates falling over and she laughed. Ha! Niner, turn on your damn light so we can both see what we're doing. She froze. Niner didn't need a light. He had night vision capabilities. He wouldn't have knocked over anything. Her hand slowly went to her thigh where her pistol was still at. Niner, she hissed. She knew it wasn't him, but she didn't want to give away her knowledge yet. Niner, answer me. On the last word, she spun and raised her pistol fast and aimed it. Nothing. No one was there. Just the same dim red hallway. Leah kept her gun trained, every one of her senses trying to make sense of the situation. She walked away from the engines and towards the door to the corridor, looking left and right. Niner, we have a stowaway. Do you hear me? She screamed. There was no question that there was an intruder on the ship. But when had they gotten on? Were they one of the bounty hunters in Garrick's fortress? He wouldn't put a hit on her, not right before a job. But that didn't mean anything. It was possible that the hunter wanted the hit for himself, and so was going to bump off her and get the bounty himself. Or worse, it could be that Krosh already knew she was coming for him. He could very easily have spies in Garrick's fortress who knew that Garrick was gunning for him. It was unlikely, but she had to find out who it was and where they were hiding. She marched out of the engineering and cursed. Niner, she screamed, get your metal butt out here and... She stopped as the sickening realization set in. Niner wasn't answering because he couldn't answer. Had the intruder silenced him? Was she on her own? Her pistol trembled slightly as she took in that reality. Not alone again. She didn't want to be alone again, especially not with an enemy she couldn't see. She felt it. She felt it before she heard it. The subtle displacement of air as a figure moved in to occupy the space behind her. With a fury, she spun fast, gun ready, aiming at the chest of her enemy, and then her eyes widened. Her heart stopped. Her gun nearly fell from her hand. He was death incarnate, adorned in a black cape that covered his shoulders and backdrop behind his legs and torso. He wore clothing that looked like it was stitched from the night itself. A dark belt wrapped around his waist with a crimson buckle that bore the engraving of the Sith Empire. A hood covered his head, but she could make out terrifying yellow eyes that burned with a fierce but cold fire. The hood and its shadow hid his face, but she knew those yellow eyes. No, no, she whispered. The figure reached out his hand, and a metal tube-like object flew from his belt to his hand. The moment he gripped it, it hissed to life as a fiery red glowing blade emerged. Straight and glowing, it hissed at Leah, and he raised it at her eye level. Leah winced, feeling similar burns on the sides of her face as she spun and fled. Get away from me! Leah winced, feeling familiar. She turned and fired 3 blasts from her pistol at the Sith. With the flourish of his saber, he deflected all 3 blasts with ease and marched after her. Leah ran with all her might, every fiber of her being ordering her to escape. She'd seen Sith before. She'd seen what they could do and what they enjoyed doing. She'd done everything she could to stay out of their way, to avoid them. What the hell was a Sith doing on her ship? How had he gotten here? She darted through the port side corridor and into the cargo bay. Apparently, the ship was originally designed for researchers and scientists, as when she'd acquired it, this room was full of science equipment and gear that she didn't recognize or know about. Now it was where she had done some of the individuals she'd captured for transport. It was empty now, but it was also a dead end. She slammed the door behind her, backing away fast and reloading the power pack for her pistol. She backed up. Eyes trained on the door as the crimson lighting overhead made the world feel as red and deadly as that lightsaber. She winced and tried to calm herself, but her heart wouldn't stop pounding rapidly in her chest. She tried to sense the emotions and feelings of the Sith, to get an idea of his intent, but she sensed nothing from him. He was cold and ruthless, an unfeeling monster like all of his kind. She took another step back and then felt a solid mass behind her. She spun at the sensation and screamed. There he was, somehow managing to get inside the room despite her best efforts. Leah raised her pistol and unloaded a volley of lasers in his face. The Sith raised his lightsaber and deflected all of them, sending red laser bolts in all directions. It It was useless. She couldn't kill this fiend. The Sith reached for his hood and slowly removed it to show his face. Leah looked on it. And a wave of revulsion, disbelief, and terror coursed through her being as screams reverberated in her head. "No!" she screamed, her body bolting upright from the sofa. Her eyes were wide with terror as her body glistened with sweat, and her hand on her blaster shaking and seeking a target. Where was the Sith? Why were the lights back on? Why was she on the couch? What happened? "Master, are you quite all right?" The hovering form of Niner hovered into the main hold. Looking at her, she lowered her pistol. "You were making quite the ruckus for being asleep." I'm fine." "Bad dream," Leah whispered. "Oh, I understand. This is quite normal for organic life forms to experience negative dreams during stressful or worrying situations. Are you perhaps stressed right now?" Niner asked. Leah barely heard him. Had that all been a dream? Had she really just imagined all that? "I'm fine, Niner. Please, just give me a minute," Leah instructed. "Perhaps some water would help. Water is, after all, an important..." "Niner, go away," Leah snapped coldly. Niner never lost his chipper tone, but gave something of a disgruntled tut before hovering away. Leah sat in the holding bay quietly and alone. She kept replaying what she'd seen. The ship had lost power. A Sith showed up in the engineering bay. And his face. That face. It couldn't be him. He wasn't a Sith. She'd have known it if he was. That wretched Kalish. The last time she'd seen his face, she'd been only a child, and yet in this dream his face hadn't aged. Then again, it was hard to tell, since Kalish always wore those bone masks. Perhaps he had aged, or perhaps the dream just showed him the way she remembered him. But one thing she was sure of was that the Kalish from her memory was not a Sith. A pirate, rogue, and terrifying monster, yes, but not a Sith. So why in her dream was he a Sith? She sat there a long time thinking it over. The image of him, like a whisper, kept drifting in and out of focus. She shook her head hard and glared into the empty room as if daring him to materialize again. It was a dream. It was just a dream. It wasn't real. Her thoughts drifted to something she'd heard an old Jedi say when she was still a teen, that sometimes the Force provides us premonitions of the future and the past through our dreams. The Jedi was a fool. This dream had nothing to do with her future, and what it said about her past was inaccurate. The Kalish was a slaver, not a Sith. It was just nerves. Niner was right. She was just stressed. That was it. "Master," Niner announced gleefully, "you're finally back." "Needed to just collect my thoughts," Leah answered, walking into the cockpit and blinking wearily at the hyperdrive lane that filled up the whole cockpit viewing windows. "How long until we get to DU?" "Navi computer estimates we will arrive in approximately 30 minutes, Master." "Good. I need to get my mind on the job and not on the past," she growled. "The past, Master? Does that have something to do with your dreams?" "Old demons coming back to haunt me. Like I said, I need to get my mind off of it," Leah answered curtly. "You know," Niner went on, "I recall going through a fascinating data log from a medical station. I was attached to that said that get quite often dreams about our past can be a sign of..." "Niner, I'm really not in the mood for you to psychoanalyze me," Leah mumbled. Niner paused a moment. Though he was incapable of expressing it, Leah could tell he was feeling something close to sympathy. "Master, you know that I'm always here to listen. It is my utmost desire to assist you in all issues that might hinder you or hurt you." He paused as if waiting for Leah to shout or snap at him, but instead she sat in her chair gazing out at space without expression. "I like to think that after 3 years of collaboration, we might have established a bond or something akin to trust." "I do trust you, Niner," Leah answered softly. "But this is something personal. I'm not comfortable talking about it." "Then would that not imply you do not trust me?" Niner asked curiously. Leah glanced sideways at the droid and then gave an apologetic smile. "It's like you said earlier. I just need rest," she explained. Soon as the conversation was over, Niner turned to hover away before pausing midair. "If possible, Master, do you think one day you will tell me this personal thing?" "One day, yes," Leah replied. Pleased with this answer, Niner hovered away back to his work, while Leah turned her gaze back to the emptiness of space and the brilliant light of the hyperspace highway. As the brilliant colors rolled past her, she again felt that feeling of smallness, but this time the sensation was accompanied with the memories of long ago when she was her most small, her most helpless, and her most afraid. Memories of screams and of pleas and memories of tears. as a tall and menacing Kalish laughed overhead. Tears rolled down Leotai's face in the present as she fought back the face she'd just been reminded of. It was just a dream. It was nothing, she spoke to the universe, praying it listened to her and heeded her plea. All right. And that was chapter 2 of Priceless. And yes, Hannah is correct. There is a story behind the ship, and it is based on the song Starship Velociraptor by Jonathan Young. An excellent song. Give it a listen. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for tonight. I had a good time reading with you guys. I hope you guys had a good time listening. Like I said, tomorrow I will probably stream in the evening. I don't know if it'll be Batman or For Honor or what it'll be, but I do plan to stream tomorrow evening. It should be fun. And then Wednesday, Lork will do his stream, and then after that, Lork and I will both be gone until Sunday. So it will be us gone for a while. So thank you guys so much. As always, I really enjoy it. And hey, like always, I will see you in my next video. Take care.